Hello, my beautiful friends. Welcome to True Crime Wine Wednesday. Today is not a Wednesday because we have had to switch things up. We're doing a two-parter, and there's just so much information that I wanted the extra few days to make sure that everything was in order and I didn't miss anything for you all. If you're new here, hi, hello, welcome. I'm Sherilyn and I'm so glad you found me. If you are a regular Sippendale, thank you for joining me every single upload. I love and I appreciate you so much. Like I said, today's video is part 1 of 2. I'm going to try to upload part 2 tomorrow or in the next couple of days. I'm not going to make you wait an entire week for it. It just depends on the turnaround and how fast I can get that ready for you. As you can tell by the timestamp, today's video is quite a long one. It's also going to be a completely different format than I've ever done before. With that being said, we're going to get right into it. There's no riddle today. Before we get started though, I do have a quick message for you. I want to give a huge thank you to our very important sponsor for today's video, Ruggable. I am so excited about this. I have had my eye on a Ruggable rug for so long, I can't even put a time frame on it, pretty much since they came out and I saw them. To be honest, the only reason why I haven't pounced sooner is that they have so many options to choose from that I'm obsessed with. My cart just kept growing and growing and growing, and then I became so committed I couldn't dwindle down. Their Disney and Marvel line is just to die for. It's so cute. I honestly need more rooms in the house to fit all the Ruggable rugs that I plan on purchasing. I finally took the plunge and have one to start with now. We ended up going with the Jonathan Adler ink drop design in black and white. It's so stinking cute. We got the 6x9 rug and it fits perfectly in our living room. The one we had prior had taken a beating from our puppy and a 1-year-old. And that's my favorite part about Ruggable rugs. They are spill and stain resistant, plus they are slip proof. So with Revy just learning how to use her little legs and motor around, it's perfect. Clout baby's on the move. To top it off, it's machine washable. You pull off the top layer and you put it in the washing machine. The washing machine. Can you believe that we bought this big carpet cleaner that we would lug around when we would move? You have to lug it up the stairs to wash the rugs. It's a full-blown chore and I don't need any more chores on my to-do list, to be honest. So to be able to toss this rug in the washing machine and forget about it and dry it, pull it out and it's all nice and clean and just set it back up it's a busy schedule blessing. To top it off, they are interchangeable. So that full cart that I have just waiting for me to pull the clicker on, it's a-okay because while one's washing, I can just switch it out for another one. Or if it's a new season, I can just put a new one on. I am telling you, they are a game changer. If you have also had your eye on them, this is your sign. It's time. To sweeten the deal, Ruggable is offering my Sippendales 10% off. Just click the link in my description and use code SherilynDale10 for your discount. Once again, that's SherilynDale10. You guys have to let me know what you're eyeing, what you go for. Not that I need more added to my cart, but I low-key want more added to my cart. Thank you again so much, Ruggable, for the beautiful rug and for making today's very important episode possible. All right, if you are a regular Sippendale, you'll probably remember the case that I covered about a man named David Elmquist. He was the man who police had ruled died from self-immolation. His wife had told the police that he was going through some mental illness struggles, and this led the police and first responders to leave David burning inside of his home for 30 minutes because they believed he was a threat, as his wife had said he had access to knives in the house. If you have not seen the first video, I will link it in the description below. I highly recommend you go and watch it because today's video will make absolutely no sense to you. Today we're going to be listening to several recordings that include the police and fire marshal interview with David's wife, as well as a recording she made for his family. Quickly, I want to put out there so I can just dispel any rumors. The original TikTok that led me to David's story is now removed. And I just want to say that it was removed basically because there are a lot of people who are reporting it that are wanting to silence the Elmquist family. TikTok is how that creator makes her income, and it's very hard to stay monetized sometimes on TikTok. It's a lot different field out there than it is on YouTube. So when you're getting reported, you're losing your income. Some people who don't support the Elmquist family have said, see the original poster, she's taken her stuff down, even she doesn't believe it anymore, and that's not the case. If you go across her other social media, she does have the links where you can find all of the resources to support the the Elmquist family as she does. I also just want to reiterate from the first video that the Elmquist family just want answers to very valid questions and concerns. These are questions any mother, father, sibling, spouse should and would have. They are not hurling accusations. They are just bringing attention to things that they need answered. If you follow me on Instagram, you've probably seen that the Elmquist family has recently started a GoFundMe to help them continue in their fight. It has been a lot on them financially, on top of all of the emotional stress that this has caused them. And it's going to be a lot more money moving forward. I have the link in my description if you are able to donate. If you're not, please share. Even a share is just so powerful so that we can get the story out there. I will be donating my AdSense from this video to the Elmquist family. So if you are ever going to let some ad runs on one of my videos, please consider it being this one. All right, let's get going. Like I said, we are going to be listening to some recordings. David's family has released these and they are posted for everyone to go and listen to on Gavin Fish's website. I'll be leaving Gavin's site listed in the description below, as well as his YouTube. Definitely go and check out the incredible work he is doing. One thing I appreciate about him so much is how much he cares about victims. The work he is doing is just so important. So I will also have that for you guys below. All right, let's get listening to the first recording. I'm going to be communicating with you throughout the recordings so that I can give you some context that I've received from speaking with the family. Like I've said, this is something we've never done here before, but so important for this case specifically. I am going to increase the speed on the recordings. Otherwise, if I just left it running at normal speed, we'd probably be here for about 3 hours. And I just really want you guys to all, retain your attention, be able to digest this all. But Gavin has the real recordings in real time over on his side if you do want to take it in a little bit slower. All right, so this first interview that we are listening to is the interview that was conducted on the scene while everything was unfolding.
Excuse me, the date is 2/9/2018. The time is now 19 minutes. I am here with Emily Corrine, Corrine, Elmquist, Elmquist. Date of birth is 5/30/94. All right, Emily, can you hear me okay? Yeah. So, kind of as I just explained, we're just going to go over what we had already talked about. Just start from the beginning of why you called the police today. My husband woke me up a little before 11, saying that I needed to go to my parents. That it was time. He kept saying I needed to go to my parents. You were sleeping? I was sleeping. Well, sort of sleeping, just laying in bed. In your bedroom? Yes, in my bedroom. I was kind of dozing off, ready for bed. Where was he? He, I thought, was in the bedroom too, watching news. But I realized now that he was probably out in the kitchen. He came in. He was naked, saying these things. I got out of bed. I walked into the kitchen. He said, "What's going on?" He said, "It's time for you. You need to go to your parents. You need to listen to me." I walked back into the bedroom to grab my cell phone. He came into the bedroom. He grabbed his cell phone and mine and took mine from me. And I said, "Well, I need my phone." He told me that he would give it back to me when I left to go to my parents. I said, "Okay." I went back into the bedroom to grab a shirt, and I started to hear a splashing sound. I took a step out of the bedroom, and I could see that he was dumping brown liquid, which was oil, over the top of his head. And it was at that point that I realized that the stove was on, the burners on top of the stove, where the light was lit up that they were on. And then I noticed behind him he had a clicker lighter he would use to start a grill or something like that. I ran back into the bedroom, grabbed a sweatshirt, and tried to grab the lighter from the counter. And I said, "You don't need to do this. It's going to be okay. Just talk to me." He said, "No, it's fine. You need to leave." And I grabbed, and he still had the oil up and some got all over my arms and my clothes. And I went into the bathroom quickly to rinse off the oil that was on my arms, ran back out into the hallway area, and grabbed my phone, started to scream help. He put his hand over my mouth and said, "No, no, no." I was able to grab a key off of a key hanger that we have by the door, had my phone, my sweatshirt, and was able to get our dog to come out. I got into the hallway and shut the door, and I started to scream help again. There was a man that met me in the hallway, and he said, "What's wrong? What's going on?" And I said, "He has oil. He's trying to start a fire." He opened his apartment door to get his partner out. My dog started to run into their apartment. I got the dog's attention, ran down the hallway, and while I was running, I dialed 911. Got on the phone with the dispatcher, realized I didn't have my vehicle keys, so I couldn't get into my vehicle, but I had my husband's vehicle keys. Went out a side door, so I didn't have to go back into the building in the case that he was starting a big fire. Ran out the side door, was talking with the dispatcher about what was going on, and then slowly made my way back around.
I just want to point out here I slowly made my way around the building. Also, that this is supposed to be happening so fast. Allegedly, this happened in about a minute or 2 minutes, yet there was time to go and wash off her arms. Another thing that I want to bring to your attention is the oil that she's speaking about is crude oil. It's very thick and not easy to wash away. Now, she did have oil on her shirt, I believe on her shoes. We'll hear later that she says that she was covered in it, and she said that was when she was trying to reach for, well, in one case she's trying to reach for the lighter from David behind him, and then in another version it's that she's trying to reach for the sprayer hose on their kitchen sink to hose him off. It's just these things that I want to bring attention to, just because I don't know, it could just be shock, it could be Freudian slip. I have asked the family if there were any photos of her taken at the scene, and as far as we know, there weren't. But this detail about washing her arms sticks out so much to me, because I'm like, why are we so hung up on this? Why is she so hung up on this, that she went to go wash that, but she's still covered everywhere else? Is it because the story wouldn't make sense, since she's saying that there was like a tussle and that he had his arms around her and she would have oil on her, and now there's a lack of oil because he didn't actually do that? I don't know.
Or smell any smoke before you left? As I was in the hallway, I did turn back and I did see some smoke start to come out from the bottom of the door. Not a lot.
Sorry, I want to stop again. This is also very important. She's saying she did look back and she saw just a little bit of smoke. Not a lot, just a little bit. That was an odd detail for me. The first 911 phone call that came through was from the neighbors, and they said there was a lot of smoke. So this call was already before her phone call, yet when she's looking back, she's saying, it was just a little bit of smoke.
And then just kind of going back again with the history of David, you were telling me earlier that he had a previous incident where he was hospitalized. Yeah. Can you tell me about that? Yeah. He was brought to the emergency room on January 19th. He was in a state of psychosis, having delusions. We weren't sure, we, meaning myself and his parents, weren't sure if, there was something medical, like an infection or a brain tumor or something that was kind of causing these. He was making a lot of religious statements. He was very pointed towards me, thinking that I was a sinner and out to get him and evil. Brought to the emergency room where they did lab work and they talked to David and determined that he needed to be placed under a 72-hour hold. He was transferred from the Naval Grove Hospital to Fairview Riverside, where he was at that hospital for 9 days, or 10 days, I mean. He was assessed, and so the 72-hour hold would have been up that Wednesday morning. Prior to that, the doctors didn't feel that he was safe to come home because he wasn't taking his medications.
While he was at the hospital?
While he was at the hospital. And he had only taken, I don't know for sure because he hadn't signed a release form for me, but I believe that he had only taken medications once from Saturday to Tuesday night. Okay. And so they went through with a process to commit David to the hospital. As this process started, we were able to, again, his parents and myself were able to sit with David and talk to him about medications and why they're important, and he seemed willing and wanting to take them. So he began taking the medications. When he got home, this before he left the hospital, he began taking medications consistently, and they seemed to be helping him. He was becoming more stable. They had a court hearing, the whole commitment process, and the doctors that evaluated him couldn't find any evidence to support that he would be a danger to himself or anyone else. I supported that. He wasn't really dangerous to me within the first incident. He was just sort of angry with me about delusional things that weren't necessarily happening. So I supported him coming home. He was discharged on following Tuesday. He was given 1 month supply of medication. He had his first appointment with a therapist Tuesday the 7th, 2 days ago. And he had told me that he had been taking the medications, but I don't know if that's true. Okay. So not 100% sure if he was taking something at home. No, I saw him take a couple, but at the hospital he did tell us that the first 2 days he would take them, but he would just put them in his cheek and then spit them out later on. And so I don't know. I would count pills to make sure that
he was taking one every day, I was trying to make myself a presence in the bathroom when he was taking them so I could see if he was spitting them out.
And it's always been that same medication?
Yep, since he got to the hospital, they were giving him 3 milligrams of risperidone.
Okay. Yep. Okay. Any past instances of like domestic situations with you two or anything of that nature?
We've been together dating, so to say, for the past like 4 years. There have been a few instances, usually fueled by a lot of drink alcohol, where he was sometimes really angry with me. There was one instance where he pushed me. That was years ago, and it has never happened since. And normally he would just become angry with me and just not really want to have anything to do with me. And it wasn't that happened frequently. It was pretty few and far between. It hasn't happened in over a year or more. 2 years maybe.
Where did that occur?
It was probably down in the cities. I think we were out at a bar for my 21st birthday or something. So that was 2 years ago, and that was kind of the first and last time that had ever happened. And shortly after that, he stopped, I guess, getting so angry with me when he was drinking. That was almost 3 years ago now, but stopped getting angry with me when he was drinking. He cut back. He wasn't drinking as much. He worked out in North Dakota for 3 years, and so I wasn't always around. I don't know how much he was drinking when I wasn't there. But.
Okay, I can't speak on this situation because I wasn't there. From what David's family and friends have said and heard, this is the only situation that they've ever heard of, which is very out of character of David. It's hard for them to even imagine him pushing somebody. He was never an aggressive man. However, I do want to acknowledge that there are several incidences where people were witness to some of her behavior towards David. She was comfortable enough at his brother's wedding to cause a little bit of a scene in front of his family. His family had also seen her flick him in the face, and she slapped David in front of his parents the day he went to the hospital while he was in a state of psychosis and had admitted to them, "Oh, I've done that in the past to get his attention."
He worked out in North Dakota for 3 years, and so I wasn't always around. I don't know how much he was drinking when I wasn't there. But.
So past alcohol use.
And he within the last 7 months or so, he's been using marijuana quite frequently.
Within the past 7 months?
Sorry, I'm going to be stopping it a little bit in these sections here. The past alcohol abuse, the quick in terms of David's drinking in North Dakota when he was staying up there for work, the impression that I got was where he was working and the type of work he was doing is very similar to the men and guys in Alberta where I live. It's a very popular profession, and there, I guess, is this type of lifestyle and this camaraderie between your co-workers and your oil brothers. And this is kind of what David was experiencing when he was at work, but he was so responsible. He worked so hard. Of course, he'd have some drinks with the guys after work, but remember that when you have this type of job, there is zero acceptance for you partying too hard, coming to work drunk still or super hungover. You can't be smoking weed while you're on the job. If you get tested and you are positive, you've lost your job. So yeah, he was social. He would have some drinks with his family or his coworkers and friends, but he was the one always looking at his watch. Okay, this is the last one. I gotta be up at 4 tomorrow. See you later. Thanks for the drinks. Bye. He never missed a day of work. He was so happy out there, his family said, and he was so proud of his job.
So that's new for him.
He's used it sporadically throughout his life, probably since he was 19, 20, 18, the last 4 or 5 years he's used it. When he was he went to a 2-year Bible college, and when he was attending there, he used it quite a lot. We weren't together then, this is just what he told me. And then with his work that he was doing in North Dakota, he couldn't because he was drug tested frequently. And so he didn't use for about 3 years, and he just moved back this past July and started using right away. I was unaware that he was using it for a long period of time. When I became aware, obviously it was an issue, and wanted him to stop. Told me that he did, but would just hide it from me. And I was completely unaware of how much he had been using. I did read some notes from a therapy appointment that he just had this past Tuesday, and he told that therapist that he had been smoking about an ounce a week. Something like that. I don't have any idea how much that is or whatnot. So that's all that I know. When he went to the hospital the first time, so 3 weeks ago, he told us that he went to the hospital on a Friday. The Tuesday before that, he had smoked an entire joint in one night by himself. And that it was some type of weed that gives you more of a mental high than like a body high. Sense of the high, I don't know. Okay.
This one's triggering for me. Really important to take into consideration. These are David's private notes and his homework and conversations that he jots down in his therapy sessions with his doctor. I don't know if you've been to counseling. If you have, a lot of times you're encouraged to bring a notebook. They'll get you to write down your feelings. They'll get you to write down certain things about yourself. You can go home and reflect on it. You use this book as a journal during the week when you don't see your therapist, so you can kind of go back and talk about how your week went. These are your private feelings, conversations between you and your health professional. And this just goes to show that David had no privacy in his life. He was always looked at under a microscope. Everything he did wasn't right. He was walking on eggshells every day of his life. And so just this comment coming from her shows that he really had no privacy. She found out how much he was smoking at one point in his life because she read his notes.
I don't have any idea how much that is or whatnot. So that's all that I know. When he went to the hospital the first time, so 3 weeks ago, he told us that he went to the hospital on a Friday. The Tuesday before that, he had smoked an entire joint in one night by himself. And that it was some type of weed that gives you more of a mental high than like a body high. Sense of the high, I don't know. Okay. And he had, through the hospitalization process, he did tell the doctors that he's used cocaine. Sporadically, I think he only mentioned 2 times within the last 2 years.
Okay. Any alcohol use tonight?
Not that I'm aware of. When he was in the hospital, all the alcohol's out of the house. He was very on board with living a sober life and getting his life back on track. And so like I said, I don't know. Obviously, I would have to look through his truck to see if he did anything. I'm pretty straightforward with him, and I ask him every day since he's been home, have you done any drugs today? That sort of thing. Just because if it was drug induced, then it's easier to know like what's happening. If he's using again, I'm sort of thinking that it probably wasn't solely drug induced.
Do you think that he was smoking tonight?
I'm not sure. I don't think so. I got home around a little after 4:30. He got home a little after that, before 5. And we've been in the apartment together. He did come out to his truck a few times because he had left a soda or something that he wanted in his truck, but he was only out for, just enough time to grab it and come back. And he did go out one more time. I think he had left his wedding band. He burned it when he worked, and so I think he left his wedding band in the vehicle. But he, again, it was really quick. So I didn't assume that he was smoking. I'm pretty good about smelling it now that I know what it is and that he was using so frequently. And I didn't smell anything on him tonight.
Would you be able to tell?
I think so. I'm going to have a pretty good idea. Granted, like when all of this happened, I wasn't super keen on my senses and smelling. I was more smelling like the oil that was being splashed on the floor. So I'm not 100% sure. Okay. If it's in his truck, I would be able to smell it. And that's where he has kept it in the past.
Anything else you can think of to add on that might be beneficial?
I don't know. Everything.
Yeah.
Spent a lot of time the last few weeks thinking about kind of everything. He is, I think, struggled with a lot of depression and anxiety for most of his life and turned to drugs and alcohol to cope with that. I'm not excusing that whatsoever, but I think that was a coping mechanism for him for a long time, and it sort of just evolved into this abusive relationship with substances. I don't really know. I felt very sure when he came home a week ago that things were moving in the right direction. He was really happy, and I told him, like, you're gonna have days that are just kind of down, and days are gonna be exhausting, and he kind of was having one yesterday. He was having a hard time. Like, it seemed like he had so much on his brain that he was having a hard time talking to me about it. Okay. And so I just sort of processed with him, kind of asked him a lot of questions to get him to sort of talk, and then he was able to start talking, and he was really very apologetic for using drugs, and so sorry, I was disrespectful to you, and sort of like that, for a long time, and I felt that about it. I didn't think anything was, odd or out of the ordinary. I thought, he's starting to come to a realization of things could go a lot differently, and hopefully going to change his life, but I don't really know what happened tonight. I do think he may have. he did mention, I did notice tonight, when he woke me up that his Bible was sitting next to him, or sitting next to the bed. This is something that's out of the ordinary. I mentioned before the religious statements. He did ask me tonight if he could read his Bible, and I just said I wasn't super comfortable with that, just because it kind of spurred a lot of the delusions with the previous hospitalization. He seemed to understand. He was like, yeah, no, that's fine. Whatever. Okay. Hello? Yeah, this is. Hi. I know that my husband was brought to HDMC for burns, yes. I know that I called 911 because he was pouring oil over his body, and he had the stove lit. I know that he has severe burns over most of his body.
Just the casual nature of that part of the phone call really affects me. I've listened to this a few times, but the first time I heard that, I was just in shock. I know everybody deals with these types of situations differently, and I am very sensitive, so that could just be me. I had to take a little Vino pause quickly. He just had surgery and he's crying downstairs because he's alone. So he's just going to sit with us for a couple minutes. I'm going to brush forward a little bit on the recording here. She leaves the vehicle and takes a phone call from the doctor, I believe, or one of the medical staff at the hospital, just informing her of David's condition and that it is not looking good. I will bring it back to where she comes back in the car.
The doctor just called me. You the one person cancer. Yeah. That police officer is taking me to HCMC right now because I have to decide whether or not to put him in over here or you gotta go to HCMC. They're taking me right now. Yeah, me and Mosley. I'm gonna call him right now.
So that's her mom that she's talking to at the end there, asking her to come meet her at the hospital. Things aren't looking good. She also needs someone to meet her there because she has their dog with them. I mean, there's no denying there's emotion in her voice. I don't know if it's just because I'm cynical because I watch so much true crime. Initially, I thought, okay, there's some emotion there, and I was, almost waiting for it because this whole entire interview, 30 minutes, there hadn't been any. And then I thought, okay, well, you know who else had emotion? Dahlia DiPolito. So before we go to the next recording, I just want to give some context into the following day after David's family is trying to process everything and get some answers as to how did we go from him coming to our house the morning of the day that he died, saying that he wanted to get a divorce from his wife. She was toxic, manipulative, and he wanted to move back home. His parents said absolutely, and the plan was for him to come home the next day. So now this next day comes and they're trying to find answers as to what happened in those hours that he was at home. According to David's parents, they went to Emily's parents' house the next day. When they got there, she was just sitting on a couch, very matter of fact, no emotion, just kind of sitting and looking. And I mean, maybe that's just the grief process, just trying to take everything in. David's mom, Nancy, tried to console her by going over, rubbing her leg, just trying to get an understanding of, how she's doing and what happened. There was other family members and people at the house as well. So David's father, Scott, suggested to Emily that they just go kind of step to the side and go have a private conversation to go over everything. Right away, her mom said, no, if you are going to talk, you're talking right here. The whole situation was uncomfortable. I don't think Scott really wanted to go through it with everybody there. It's an emotional thing to try to process. This is his son. And so he thought, all right, it's just best if I remove myself from the situation. And he went and he waited in his car, and Nancy stayed inside. And she just said, okay, I'll stay. We can talk here. What happened? Emily's response was, I've told too many people and I'm tired of talking about it. Nancy's like, okay, I can understand that, but he was my son. Out of all of the people that you've told, so many people that you're tired of talking about it in, less than 8 hours, I feel like myself or his father should at least be included in this group of what happened. She says, sorry, I can't. And then Nancy just outright says, well, I need to know because this isn't making sense. David came to our house yesterday and said that he was wanting a divorce and he was coming home today. Right away, the conversation was ended by Emily's mother, and she told Nancy she had to leave the house, which she did. Finally, she agreed to at least speak to David's sister, Amy. She agreed that Amy could record the conversation while she went through the whole events of the evening, under the condition that once his parents listened to the tape, it needed to be deleted. David's dad, Scott, received the recording. He listened to it, and after he did, he just said, there was something in him that decided, I can't delete this. I have to keep it. And so we have this recording. This was recorded on September 14th, Valentine's Day, 2018. This is 2 days before David's funeral.
My world, all my little sisters. Upside down. I got home from work. David was picking up his truck when I was home. He came home. We just sat around, watched TV, asked him how you guys were, what you guys visited about. He said, same old same. Seemed totally fine. After a little while, I had to start working on some homework. We were watching Planet Earth on Netflix and laughing at the silly animals. And Mosley, David ran out to the truck a couple of times to get his under the flat and walking across something by your bed. I don't know if he forgot a cop in there or something. Came back in, was gone for a few seconds, then a couple minutes, just enough time to walk outside. He wanted to make me dinner, so he made shrimp Alfredo. He wasn't really feeling very hungry, so he didn't eat any right away. I took a bath and read my textbook for a while. He watched The Office or something like that, maybe Friends, I'm not exactly sure. I got out of the bath and I had to finish reading. David decided he was going to take a bath. He went and he got it way too hot, and so he had to drain the water, so he took 2 baths, and then took a shower. Came back out to the living room, and he decided to eat after I kind of encouraged him to eat something, because he was still sort of getting back to his typical self, and, he still was, he seemed happy. Yeah, he seemed fine. He was like, yep, he ate, I went into the bedroom, I had to type some stuff for my grad classes. I did that, I came back out, we sat there and we talked for, I don't know, a while. He just said, I'm so happy you came back out to chat with me, I thought you would have done right away. So we talked for a while. He took Mosley out to go to the bathroom. I started getting ready for bed. This was probably just before 10. David sat on bed with me, and we turned on the 10 o'clock news, which is very normal, something we do pretty much every single night. Watched the news for a little while, and I was starting to feel pretty tired, so I said I'm going to go to sleep. He said, do you care if I stay up and watch the news? I said, no, just turn it down a little bit. He turned the volume down, but left his bedside table light on, so I just kind of covered my face up. Put a blanket over my eyes so that it was dark so I could fall asleep. And I just kind of been dozing in and out of sleep. Mosley was still laying on the bed. It was probably about 10 to 11 or so. I really don't know exactly what time it was. Everything happened in probably 2 minutes. I heard David say, Emily, you need to get up. It's time for you to go. And I was, again, in sort of a sleepy state, so I was like, what's going on? Took the blanket off my face, and I saw that David was completely naked. He was standing at the end of the bed, saying, Emily, you need to go to your parents, it's time to go. I was very disoriented. He walked out into the kitchen and stood in front of the stove, and I walked out of our bedroom and was in the hallway and could see him, and just thought, what the heck is going on? And I said to David, what's going on? Why do I need to leave? He wouldn't really respond. He just said, it's time for you to go to your parents. You need to leave. I said, I was like, okay, so I just went back into the bedroom quickly to grab my phone, so I knew I needed to call 911. As I grabbed my phone, he came in and pushed me and grabbed both my phone and his phone. And I said, honey, I need my phone. I have to leave. He said, you can get it when you leave. I said, okay. I grabbed a shirt, a sweatshirt. While I was putting my shirt on, I heard a splashing noise. I looked, I went into the entryway hallway, and David had the container sort of clear. There was a brown liquid. I'm assuming it's some sort of oil that he had raised above his head and was pouring it over his body. That is when I saw that the light that indicates the burner for the stove was on. And then I saw a lighter, like a lighter you would use to light a candle, behind him. Yep, behind him. I reached for it. He pushed me. I got oil all in my hair, all down my body, all on my clothes, my boots, the whole everywhere. I started to scream for help. He covered my mouth with his hand and pushed me up against the door. I was able to, he let go, and I ran into oil. I went back into the kitchen.
I just find this so hard to follow. Starting with the whole, trying to brush past, I thought it was oil. I'm assuming this was oil. The summer before he moved away from his sister's house, she had pictures of the double wide that he was living in. And as she was looking through these pictures quite recently after David's passing, in one of them, underneath one of the tables, you can see this jug that was used that evening. When he moved, his sister knew that it went with him. She didn't know where it was though. But he kept this oil as souvenirs. He used to have them in little Gatorade bottles and he would hand them out as gifts. He would talk to everybody about them. He was so proud of the work that he had done on the oil field. So she really tries to distance herself a few times in interviews around this oil, and she's not sure where it was or what it was or where it came from. And everybody who knew David knew that he kept this oil from working in North Dakota. I also find it a little bit interesting that during this struggle with the oil and him pushing her initial reaction when she gets free, when the front door is right there, is to run into the bathroom and rinse herself off.
I went back into the kitchen. I tried to turn the faucet on to spray this oil off of him. He pushed me again. I was able to grab my phone and a key. I didn't know what key. It was his truck key that I was able to grab. I opened the door and he pushed me out. I screamed for Mosley to come. Mosley came and I got into the hallway and I immediately started screaming for help in the hallway. There was a gentleman that came down the hallway. He said, "What's going on? What do you need?" They said, my husband is about to start a fire. I don't know what's going on. Please help. I immediately dialed 911, told the dispatcher, gave them our address, and
This is very inconsistent with what happened, actually. Even in her first account of what happened that night in the back of the police car, while everything is unfolding, she tells the interviewing officer that their dog ran into this neighbor's apartment, took a little bit. They had to try to get the dog out. Then she was making her way down the hallway. By this point, the neighbors had already called 911 and they were trying to get immediate help. And she didn't call 911 until she was quite a ways down the hall. It was not immediate. This urgency that she has all of a sudden is not accurate, and it's kind of trying to distance herself from maybe having more questions to answer, especially when she's describing the oil all over her. It's very descriptive when she's speaking about where it is on her and all over her. When she talks to David, he just started splashing on, pouring oil all over herself. For her, she remembers it was in her hair, it was on her body, on her boots, everywhere. There was so much of it she had to go off and rinse her arms.
I ran out the back of the building. Mosley's running around. I did not have a leash for him. I'm covered in oil, panting. I can't breathe, trying to tell the dispatcher what's going on. As I was outside, I got a hold of Mosley, ran to the front of the building because I noticed I had David's truck key, not my own vehicle key, and waited for the responding officers to show up. I put Mosley in the truck. The responding officers got there very quickly, within a couple of minutes. I talked with the responding police officer for what seemed like ever, as the firefighters got their stuff that they needed, their EMTs got what they needed, and they went into the apartment. Everyone from our apartment building is standing outside. I talked to the officer. I answered as many questions as I could. Sat in her vehicle for I'm not sure how long, for a while. And then they came down. I believe it was maybe the responding officer's boss. I'm not sure if she was a sergeant or whatever. Came down to get some information about David, as far as medications and stuff like that. While she was talking to me, an EMT came over and asked me date of birth, if he has any allergies to medications, if he was on any medications, drug use, all of that. Gave them all of those answers. I could see the ambulance sitting there. That left quickly, and then I had to stay with the police officer because I had to give a formal statement, so I had to record what I said for the police report. So I did that. While I was doing that, I received a call from, they had told me, the EMT had told me that they were taking him to HCMC, Hennepin County Medical Center, to the burn unit. And I just asked, is he okay? Is he alive? They said he is alive, but he has third-degree burns over most of his body. I said, okay.
Oh, the stories, it's just so hard to listen to. Just like, I mean, keep in mind, this being told to David's sister, who he was very close with. You're telling the story to his parents about this night, and everything is just, I went like this and I went like this, and then they called and he had 3rd-degree burns all over his body. I said, okay, what? And one thing I just kind of wanted to refer back to when she says the ambulance came, it left quickly. That's not true. David was left burning in his apartment for over 30 minutes.
And they left, and I finished giving my formal statement. Got the call from the hospital. It was Dr. Lombard, who you would have met there. He informed me that I needed to get down to the hospital as soon as possible. He let me know that David was severely injured and that there really wasn't anything that they could do. If they even tried to do surgeries, it would cause David a lot of pain, and he would have such a long road to recovery. He wasn't even sure if surgery was an option at that point. So I got in the police car. They drove me with the lights on, me and Mosley, to HCMC, which is when I called you guys and my parents, and let you guys know what was happening. When I got down to the hospital, they explained what was going on and that they had contacted the burn surgeon, and he was making his way down to look at David. I went in and I saw him and I said, "Oh, hi, David." And I couldn't be in the room very long. And so I sat outside and I just looked at him and I cried. I told him how much I loved him. And then the surgeon came and looked at him and said that there was no, and that they could use to graft, and it would take, there was nothing that they could do. So I met with the senior physician, the junior physician, and the surgeon and the chaplain, just kind of to talk about everything. And you guys showed up, shortly after that, and David, after you guys left and we took the breathing tube out, he passed away within about 10 minutes. And I loved him. I loved your son very, very much. We weren't perfect, but we were really good together. And I miss him. I love you guys, and I know that he loved you. And he told me when he got out of the hospital, when he got out of the Sarian hospital, that, he was really into relationships, and he really wanted to work his relationship with you guys and with me, and he was trying really, really hard. And I loved him, and I won't ever stop. That's all that I can say. I don't have any more information. I don't know what happened. I don't think that we ever will. But I find a lot of peace and comfort in knowing that David was really sick, and he was really struggling, and he's not anymore. And he's doing all the things that he loves to. He's skiing and getting PRs, and he's biking in the mountains, and he's golfing every day. And I find peace in that. And I hope that, eventually we can all heal together as a family from this. Because that's what David would want. David loves his family. He loves everybody so much. And I hope that we can do that for him.
All right, there's quite a bit I want to share here. I think just listening to this, you're probably under the impression that when David passed away, he was with his wife. The Elmquist family was told that was not the case. David's family had rushed to the hospital when they found out what had happened. And while they were driving, and even when they arrived, David's father, Scott, was so distraught. He was unable to calm himself down. He had this scream cry that his wife had never heard from him before. He had never cried like this before. His heart was so broken that you could just hear the pain just trying to come out of him. And so when he was at the hospital, he couldn't compose himself. He couldn't make himself cry quieter. And so they made the really painful decision that they were going to say goodbye to their son, and just out of respect for his wife, who is there to say goodbye as well, and everybody else in the hospital who's also dealing with, their own traumas, they were going to leave to just not upset anybody. What they found out later is something that still haunts them. They found out that David died with strangers. A nurse and a chaplain were the ones to stay with him and hold his hand when he died, because his wife and her mother left the hospital after his parents did. I can only speak to two times a loved one has passed in our family, and I'm just going to touch on one of the more recent ones because this just happened not too long ago. Again, I know that everybody deals with things differently, but I could never imagine leaving knowing that my husband was going to die alone. We recently lost my stepbrother, and the doctors kept him alive for the hours that it was going to take for my parents to go down and be with him before they took him off of life support. Even though he was technically gone, they could not stomach the thought of anything happening without them being there and him not being alone or with strangers when it happened. This also brings me to David's ashes. David was cremated, and 14 months after he was cremated, his family found out that he was still in the vault at the funeral home. They had asked his wife several times, what's the plan with the ashes? Are we going to do something for him? Are we going to disperse them? They wanted to bring a piece of him home with them, and every time they were just told, I don't know what we're going to do with them yet. Finally, she came to the plan that they were going to bury them in the spring. When spring came, she said she wasn't ready and didn't know what she wanted to do. So even with them asking, continually, do we have a plan yet? What's the plan? Not getting anywhere. And then they find out that he had been alone again for 14 months. They're just gutted. This is another heartbreak. He was just left alone. Because Emily was his wife, his ashes needed to be released to her. So for the very first time since David's passing, his sister put up a post on Facebook. The post was something along the lines of, she was really upset. She didn't know how much longer she and her family could take being treated the way they were with how everything was unfolding with David's death, and really wanted to know why after 14 months, his ashes were still in the funeral home. The next morning after that post was posted, Emily went to the funeral home. She got David's ashes and she split them in half. She took half and she gave the other half to their pastor and instructed him to go and give them to Scott and Nancy. By this time, she was with a new man who she's already married to. They got together shortly after David's death. Not that that means that it shows you did something, but the way I see it, it's like that's another form of control that she has to have in the situation, and more control over David. I mean, you've clearly moved on with your life. Why not give his family his ashes, That's my personal opinion. And the fact that he was just left there for 14 months breaks my heart. And I'm not saying this to accuse anybody of doing something to David, but it's just these consistent question marks that pile up. And it really leads you to believe that if their relationship was in the state that she felt it was that night, and everything was good, would you not want to be there to hold his hand when he left? Would you not want to get his ashes as soon as you could home so that you could feel like he was there again with you? All right, this next interview that we're going to listen to was taken on March 1st, and it's hard for me to listen to because it's very obvious at this point. Investigators are done with the Elmquist family's questions. They've already made up their mind that there's nothing to see here, and they just need to do their due diligence, do this interview, and just get the Elmquists off their back, basically.
Sergeant Heathcliff, Batch 161. Case number 1805796. The date is March 1st, 2018. The time now is 16:58 hours. This will be a case statement with first name Emily. Last name is Elmquist. Date of birth is 5/30/94. Interviews taking place at the police department. And Emily, just so you know, you don't have to talk to me if you don't want to. You're not under arrest for anything. You can feel free to leave at any point, okay? Typically, when something like this happens, our patrol officers try and get a statement from any witnesses or involved parties the night that it happened. What happens, though, is we learn other information as things go along, and there's questions that need to be asked that they probably didn't think to ask you that night.
Sure.
And that's kind of why I wanted to talk to you. Okay. Just to answer some of those questions and a little more of the backstory about kind of what led up to this. David's family obviously has a lot of questions about the events that led up to this, and hopefully we can answer some of those questions for them.
Have they contacted you?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's understandable. I mean, it's their son.
Yep. Absolutely.
I don't know if you caught the tone in the voice. She's not happy that the Elmquist family has contacted the police. It will come up again, but I just wanted to point it out if you didn't hear the tone.
I don't know what your relationship is with them, but they're struggling, and I understand that. So,
Can I ask when they contacted you?
I think David's dad reached out to me fairly soon after this happened.
Sure.
Like within the first couple of days, just wanting to talk to me and wanting to know what I knew and stuff. I mean, just questions that I would have as a parent too.
Yep.
So, So
Why does it matter? Why does it matter when they contacted? Why is this crucial? Just be like, I will give you the answers you need. And had you given them the answers they were asking the day after this happened to their son, they wouldn't have had to ask the investigator.
how long were you and David married?
Almost 11 months to the day. Our anniversary is March 11th.
Okay. And then how long had you been together before that?
We started dating 2004, about 4 years.
Okay.
I think. But I've known him since I was 8 or 9.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we grew up in church together.
Okay.
So we were really good friends throughout our childhood into high school and sort of lost touch when we went to college.
Sure.
Went our separate ways and reconnected a year or two later.
Okay. So at what point did things change with David? Was there signs of this 5 years ago, 2 months ago?
You know, it's easier to say now kind of looking back.
Yeah.
There have been some small instances, usually when he was very intoxicated, where he would sort of act in kind of a bizarre way.
Sure.
Of course, at the time, you know, it was, well, he's drunk or he's whatever. Thinking back, you know, obviously I kind of rehashed everything and think, was this a sign that I have known? I'm very involved in the mental health field. I'm a teacher and I work with students who have a lot of mental health or mental illnesses and all sorts of stuff. So I pride myself on being really aware, but obviously when you live with them, you're just not as much, and I know that.
This is so important. And that, I think, is such a contradiction in what she's trying to say. She prides herself on being this mental health expert. She works with people with mental illness every single day. But, you know, when you're living with somebody, you might not be as susceptible to it. No, that is when you would notice the most. It's your loved ones who your healthcare professionals make sure are keeping their eye on you. You know, like they're the ones looking out for you. When they see a change in you, it's your loved ones or spouse that are like, okay, I think we need to go talk to someone. I think you need to talk to someone. You're acting different. This is not who you are in your day-to-day life. I also want just to put it out there so that it's on your mind while you're listening to this, as a mental health expert, that, you know, she prides herself again on this mental health work that she does. She's trained to de-escalate situations. My question is, how many of your patients have you slapped across the face to try to bring them back to reality? Also, as a mental health professional, it is your job to advocate for those who you are looking out for. I feel like your husband would fall under that category. You're the only one who knows this individual, and you're the only one who can give the appropriate information to get them the help as quickly as possible. Saying that he's a threat, leading first responders to believe that they needed to protect themselves and they couldn't go inside, and having him stay behind those doors for over 30 minutes and not getting help when David had never been a threat to anybody in his entire life. It's absolutely incompetent and incomprehensible.
As far as real signs, honestly, I don't think that there was anything really major until he was in the hospital. He went into the hospital on January 19th.
And what sparked that?
So that was a Friday, and it was the Thursday prior. He was at work, and he was just kind of talking in sort of an odd way. He wasn't really making a lot of sense. He was very scatterbrained, is kind of how his coworkers described it. He worked for a water well company servicing city wells. And he worked, there was many people at the company, but he worked directly with one other person, and they would go out and do different jobs. And
how long had he been doing that?
He started that like at the beginning of October, end of September. October.
That's really new.
And his partner, I guess you could say, the person who worked with him, they rode out to a location, and he just kind of had an uneasy feeling something wasn't right, something was off, and so he was like, oh, let's go back to the shop, and he had either texted or called their supervisor and just said, something's not right, we're coming back. So they got back. The supervisor talked to David. A couple of other people had talked to him, and they all were in agreement that he was just sort of irrational, talking about things that didn't really make a lot of sense, making some like these religious statements, which is really out of the ordinary for him. And so they told him to go home, so they sent him home early that day. And so I wasn't aware of this. So I was at work, and I got a call, a call from his mom. Didn't see it. I was talking with some coworkers, getting ready to leave, and I got a text from his brother. And I had seen at that point that I had the missed call, but was like, I'll just call her back later. Saw the missed call, saw the text, and then I started thinking, okay, something's wrong. What happened? And his brother had just said, are you on your way home? I said, yep. He said, I think something's wrong with David or whatever. He's talking to me. He's talking about North Dakota. He worked in North Dakota for 3 years. And he's like saying really weird things that don't make any sense and all this stuff. And so I had just texted his brother back. I said, please keep him on the phone. You know, it takes me 15 minutes to get home. Just keep talking to him. so I know he's okay. Right. So I got home, and he was kind of like elated, like he was just like, oh yeah, things are so great, and whatever, and I was like, okay, I just put on, I'm a case manager, so I just kind of put those pants back on and was like, all right, I was asking a lot of questions, and he was sort of irrational, wasn't making a ton of sense, like his thoughts were like, you're talking about one thing, and then all of a sudden it was like right over here, and then it was back over here, and then they weren't making a ton of connections. But as we talked, I like to think I'm a pretty rational person, so as we talked, he sort of started to come back down, I guess to earth, sort of, is how I describe it, so he started to calm down, I think. He was just kind of really wrapped up in whatever. It started to make more sense. He said a few things that I was like, that's weird, but I called him out and I was like, David, that doesn't make any sense, but he just said, and he, after thinking about it, was like, yeah, you're right. Went to bed fine, woke up the next day, and I knew something was made, I couldn't really figure it out. He woke up and he said something along the lines of, I need to drive you to work today. And I thought, well, he has a truck, maybe it snowed and the roads are bad or something. I said, oh, if it snowed and the roads are bad? No, I just have a feeling I need to drive you to work today. He said, well, no, that's fine, I can drive myself. No, Emily, I need to drive you to work, the world is ending. I said, why are you thinking this? And he said I don't even know, I don't even remember what the reasons were. And he said, no, David, the world isn't ending, I think he said something about, Trump, the world ending and Trump's president, blah, blah. I said, yeah, and when Hitler rose to power, everyone probably thought the world was ending, and, I listed that, but he's like, yeah, no, it's fine. Okay, it's fine. So he called his boss, and he's like, yeah, I'm just going to be a little bit late. Goes to work. Fine. I go to work. I get to work. I have 6 missed calls from him. I mean, it literally takes me, we left at the same time, 15 minutes to get to work. I'm like, then he's calling me again. So I'm like, okay, answer it. I say, what's up? He called me 6 times. Is everything okay? He said, oh, I just worried about you. Are you at work? Did you make it? I said, yeah, I'm fine. I said, take a deep breath. Calm down. Everything's fine. I'll see you tonight. I said, okay. I made sure to do my phone. I texted him throughout the day just to check in, see how things were going. I was able to get the number for his company that day and talk to his boss before, because I hadn't talked to them Thursday about why they hadn't go home yet. Yep. And so Friday, before I left work, I called them and talked to them for maybe 30 minutes about kind of what they saw and what had happened. Friday, David and I were supposed to watch my best friend's son for the weekend, and so I was meeting her out in Buffalo. And so I called him on my way home just to check in again. He was texting me it was normal. He wasn't irrational. It wasn't like anything out of the blue. Okay. So I called him on the way home. Normal, nothing strange. Called him a few separate times, and he said something about how his dad wanted. Oh, I should have mentioned on Thursday night his dad came over. Okay. So sorry. Okay. So rewind a little bit. His dad came over on Thursday night and talked to him for 2 hours, hour and a half. I don't know, because I was asleep. But his dad he had a tennis match or something, and then he stopped by to talk to David. Okay. David had sort of been talking to them a little bit throughout the day when he was sort of really irrational, so his dad came over. But I don't know what was said. Okay. So now I'm jumping ahead. Yep. Sorry. Okay. So I'm driving to Buffalo, and he called and he said, oh, my parents wanted to come over. I said, okay, well, can you just ask them to wait until I'm there? And I said I should be home at 6:37.
I feel like this part already just agitates me, but I didn't want it to just, as you're listening to all this information go by. So they're his parents. They have a right to know what's going on with their son. He mentions that they're going to come and visit him because behind the scenes on their end, he had been texting them quite often and it just wasn't making sense. They knew something was wrong with their son and they wanted to get some more answers. His dad had seen him on the Thursday. When he had gone back and spoken to his wife, they're trying to come up with scenarios thinking, what could it be? He's definitely not himself. What the heck is going on? And they thought, is he using drugs? So they made the decision that they were going to go back and visit him, but without saying anything to him, they were going to bring a drug test. So this is his dad making the plan to come and see him that following day. And she's saying she wants everybody to wait until she's there. She wants nobody in the house until she is there. With her friend's small little child. I feel like that's important to acknowledge just because you've painted this man as a danger and a threat, someone who can't be saved for over 35 minutes in a burning apartment, yet he's safe enough to have a little baby stay in his home.
Somewhere around there. He said, okay. Then he calls me back. Well, why does it matter? Just my parents didn't come over. I said, well, I think there's a lot going on with you, and I would like to be there so that I can understand, what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what they're saying, and what I can help support you because you're my husband and that sort of thing. He said, okay, I'll tell him. So I went and picked up Owen, my friend's son, in Buffalo on my way home. I have no idea, I hadn't talked to him since I left Buffalo. Okay. So I get home, bring Owen upstairs, and as I get to the door, I can hear some voices. Open the door, Scott and Nancy are sitting at our dining table. David is sitting there in, I believe, just underwear, reading the book of Revelation. So at this moment, I'm thinking, shit.
Yeah.
Many other things run through my head, but I'm thinking, okay, like what's going on? I walk in and I was like, oh, I didn't think you guys, were getting here until later. Like I was pretty upset at this point just because like I have my French kid. That's just my priority right now to protect this baby. But it's also my priority to support my husband.
It's your priority to protect your friend's baby, but you've gone to pick him up to bring him into the situation when you could have very easily said, it's not a really good time. I don't think I should be babysitting. And your concern is that his parents came before you could get there. And that's going to prevent you from taking care of the baby and also supporting your husband. Very, very odd.
And I was upset that they were already there because I had no idea what happened from the time I hung up the phone to the time I walked in.
Yep.
And so I called a lot of people. I called his mom, the baby's mom, to say, I don't know what's going on. She said, do you need me to come? I said, I don't know. Because we was at a teaching conference up in St. Cloud. And so that's why I was watching the baby. And I had called, I think, my dad, just to be like, I don't know what's happening. It's literally insane. It's insanity. Scott and Nancy had brought him some dinner. He wasn't eating, wasn't responding to me whatsoever. We were there for maybe 2 hours at our apartment, and I didn't put the baby down. I was very nervous about him hurting the baby. We have a golden retriever, and when I got home, he was very anxious. He was whining. He wouldn't leave my side. He was sort of just like jumpy about kind of everything. So through this process, his parents had bought like an at-home drug test for him to take because they thought he had taken something to cause this. And I mentioned previously that years ago, sometimes David would get very intoxicated and he would sort of act similar without the religious piece.
Right.
He would be very angry at me.
Did he drink a lot prior to this, or was it?
I would love to say that I know how much he drank, but I realize now that I probably do not. He moved home in July from North Dakota, and he hadn't drank a ton leading up to this. Okay. But I believe out in North Dakota he was drinking pretty heavily. And I lived out there for two different times. I lived out there once for 3 months and then once for 8 months with his sister working out there. And this happened like the first time I lived out there, which was maybe the first year into our relationship, where he occasionally, and it wasn't every time he would get super intoxicated, it was like randomly once every now and then he would very, very drunk. It was almost like he was like happy, go lucky dude, and then he would take one more drink and all of a sudden it would just be like, I'm angry with you, you're a terrible person, I can't believe you would lie to me. I never lied to him about anything. But he would get this sort of look in his eye where he wasn't really there, and that's kind of how he was acting. And so at that point I thought he had just gotten drunk from the time he got home until then.
Sure.
And when this happens in the past, I normally would try to get his attention. I'd snap him in the face, grab his face, look at me, what did you drink? What did you take? What's going on?
Fuming. The fact that she has admitted that she has smacked him in his face so often just to find out what he's drank, if he's acting, unlike himself, it's really hard to listen to because she's really trying to paint him as this abusive person when he's drunk. Yet, if you've been in a domestic violence situation, you don't want to egg on that abuser, especially if they're drinking. You don't want to go up to them and start slapping them in the face.
His parents really didn't like that I did that. But, that's another story. And he just, nothing. He just stared deadpan in my face, wouldn't respond. I checked the cabinet where we would keep our liquor. We had just left the liquor store 4 days before or something, not even. And nothing was open, nothing was less than the levels where it had been. Okay. So I was thinking, okay, he either bought a bottle of something and drank it and dumped it somewhere, or he's not drunk and this is a super serious thing. So it was at that point, then I was sort of standing at our counter and I was trying to get the baby some milk, something, and he came and stood inches behind me and just was breathing down my neck saying, you're a sinner, Emily, I know who you are. And I'm a pretty sarcastic person, and so I just sort of let it go. I was terrified because the knives were right in front of me. And so I was trying to play off oh, can I get a little bit of, excuse me, whatever. I wasn't trying to feed into it at all. Not long after that, he stood right in front of me and told me that he forgave me for being a liar, that the Lord, our Savior, forgave me for this. He did take the drug test, and I didn't actually see the results myself. If I did, I don't remember what they said, but I know his dad said that they were positive for THC, which was expected. I knew that he was using marijuana.
When did that come into play?
The marijuana?
Yeah.
He's used off and on since he was 18. But out in North Dakota, he couldn't because they randomly drug tested frequently. And he moved home in July. Yep. And from my understanding, from what he and I talked about, he started using pretty much right away. And I was not aware at the time. And I sometimes would, I think one time I found smelled it, found the little pieces in his truck and was, super angry. And then he would stop you know, so I would calm down, and then evidently he would start back up again. Because he wasn't working and I was working, so it was pretty easy. Pretty easy for him to do when he was in. So that probably happened off and on from July until he was in the hospital. Pretty heavily, I think, from what he said when he was in the hospital. It was pretty. I mean, I think I asked him at one point, how much were you spending a month on weed? He said like $300 or more. And I've never used, I have no idea like what that equivocates to, and so I was just like, well, that's a lot of money, because for me it was like I was working multiple jobs trying to pay the bills, and I think that David really wanted to get better, he really wanted to stop, but he was so addicted to, he used chewing tobacco, he was going through a tin and a half a day recently, and I think that he would maybe, I speculate that he was maybe even drinking, you know, before he would come home, grab a beer on the way home or something like that. I don't know. I was pretty good about sniffing him out when he was smoking, so he just got really good at hiding it. I found, you know, an extra coat in his car. I found a toothbrush and toothpaste in his car because I could smell it on his breath and his clothes, so he just started to adjust that.
He's so terrified of her, so terrified of having to deal with her constant questions, snooping through his stuff, smelling him. To me, it is just like so obvious hearing all this stuff. He was pushed to the point of no return, just the brink of stress and anxiety of having somebody breathing down his neck all the time.
So this Friday night situation happens. We end up, he won't leave the apartment without our dog, chases the dog through the hallway, picks up our 70-pound golden retriever, brings him inside, and basically doesn't want anything to do with me. He thinks I'm evil, about to get him, whatever. We take him to the hospital, to the ER in Maple Grove. He goes in, he's really, doesn't really understand why he's there, doesn't think there's anything wrong, and he had sort of come down a little bit, like he wasn't super in this delusional state when he got into the hospital, but he still was, like it wasn't to the extent where he was like, I was feeling threatened. He was just sort of like, I don't want anything to do with you. Really relying on his parents for everything, again, very out of the ordinary for him. He was very paranoid in the hospital, very confused, and couldn't remember very much stuff, because of who I am, I was trying to ask him questions like, did he remember? What time did he get home? What did he do when he got home? What time did I get home? And he was just like, he couldn't remember, so then he would just like well, you know, Emily. Sure. They wanted to give him, I don't remember what they wanted to give him, I'm assuming it was like some sort of anxiety medication. Yep. When he got in, he wouldn't take it for 3.5 hours. They kept coming in every so often to offer it to him, and then when he did finally take it, it's like, you know, a 10-milligram pill. It's very small. He like picked it up and he looked at it, asked to see the packaging that it came in. They had to like dig it out of the garbage, read the packaging. Like it was so weird, and I'm just sitting there like, what is going on? They did blood work and a CT scan, because at first I thought brain tumor, you know, like that's, or like an infection in his body or something like that. And it all came back normal. So that's when the doctor said that he is going to put him under a 70-hour hold for psych eval. So I stayed at the hospital with him until 2-3 in the morning when they could get a bed. They transferred him to Fairview Riverside, where he was then for 10 days. He was there. He refused medication most of the time. He sort of was in this state of, I'm going to spread the word of Jesus to all these people. It's not what I want, it's what he wants, and I'm just going to be the light. This sort of, so that was Saturday, Sunday, Monday, he was sort of in that state. Tuesday, he started to come down, and you could talk to him and reason with him a little bit about things. And myself, his parents met with him and the nurse, one of the charge nurses there, and sort of was able to explain to him why the medications were important and how they can help him. Because really at this point on Tuesday, his focus was, all these people are crazy, you got to get me out of here. And so we tried to explain to him, like, you have to take the medications, you have to listen to what the doctors are saying, because that's what's going to get you to come home. And so he started to do that, and at this point he wouldn't sign a release for me, release of information. He signed one for his mom, or his dad, Tuesday, but he still wouldn't sign one for me.
That's really important. At this point, the only people that he trusted in his life were his mom and dad and his siblings. He did not want the doctor sharing anything with his wife. He thought anything that needed to be okayed or discussed needed to be done with his parents.
I really kept pushing because I couldn't get any information, and I wasn't sure what information his parents were getting, because I wasn't with them. Or on very good terms with them at this point. At one point, his father threatened to take guardianship of David from me. I feel, and I don't know obviously, but I felt that it was because I brought up the possibility that it could be a mental illness, not drug related. And that was
The family wants me to stress this so much. That is not the case at all. Their family has never been opposed to seeking help for mental illness at all. In fact, David's mother was prescribed antidepressants, and the reason why his father wanted to have guardianship of him was because he saw how fearful his son was. He saw with his own eyes the way he was treated when he was slapped across the face during one of these episodes, and he wanted to ensure that he got the best help he possibly could.
was something I think that was hard for them to hear, but I felt it was necessary to say, with given where David was at and how he was acting. And so we weren't really on a very good speaking terms. Like, we were trying because we had to, but it's not like we were hanging out or anything. So Wednesday David was starting to get better, and Thursday he was like much better. Like, I didn't see him on Thursday, but his brother went to see him, and he was like, "I is he here? He's like totally normal." And I'm like, "Well, you didn't see him a week ago. He wasn't." And Friday I went to see him, and it was like the normal David that I would normally see, joking, laughing. Like, his mannerisms were back to the same thing. I noticed when he was it was like he would like just stare at a wall for 30. I mean, the kid could barely sit still most of the time. Like, he was fidgety and always, he was very hands-on. He liked to just be doing the other thing a lot. And he would just sit there like this, staring at a wall forever. And so, because the first 3 days he wasn't really cooperative, he wasn't taking medications, the hospital did go through the process to commit him, like, through the county. And then, he started to get better, like, pretty much right as they did that. He started to come down. And so then they decided to do this continuance of dismissal. I'm still like a little bit foggy about what that means, but basically it would be that they were dismissing the petition to commit him. Yes. And so he had a court hearing the following Monday, and he wouldn't sign the petition because I don't think he understood what it was, and I wasn't allowed to be in the room with him. So he wouldn't sign it. So I think that really increased his anxiety about having to go back to the hospital. So he did have to go back on Monday, and then on Tuesday, I got a call from the caseworker there, the social worker there, that basically said that the psychiatrist that evaled him at the court couldn't find any evidence to support that he was a danger to himself or others. So because that's why the petition was submitted, there was no grounds for them really to go through with the petition, so they would be dropping the petition. Okay. So I got him home with 1 month supply of risperidone that he was to take every night.
How was he when you brought him home?
He was a little bit paranoid. I think he was very nervous. I think his anxiety was very high about having to go back to the hospital. Yep. And he couldn't kind of come down from the fact that, like, it was done. He was coming home, that sort of thing. He had to sign some paperwork, and he, like, again, read it all, and I was sitting there like, oh, no. Like, oh, no. But it was still him, he was paranoid, but I could still see him through all of it. I was like, okay. He came home with the medications, and we had a lot of conversations about why the medications are important and why you need to keep taking them. And my mom has suffered very severe postpartum depression, and was able to kind of talk to him about, like, there was a lot of times where I didn't want to take the medication. Granted, it's very different things, but he could relate with the medication part. And she was like, there's a lot of times it made me feel funny and I didn't want to take it, but I had to, and now I don't have to take it anymore, but I did for a year or whatever it was. And so he understood, appeared to be compliant with taking them, and he was pretty frustrated that he couldn't go back to work like Wednesday. I said, well, you've gone through a lot. Just give your body some time to rest, sleep, take a nap, take your meds, do something for yourself, sort of. And so we got home Tuesday. Wednesday we went to his parents' house to get some skis because he was going to go skiing on Thursday. Okay. So we were there for a while, and he was down in his dad's office talking to him for a while, and I chatted with his mom. But I had said something about one time, because his dad went down to take like a work phone call, and I said, oh, he's on the phone, and he was like, I need to talk to my dad, just stay up here. And I was like, okay. And I tracked behavior. I mean, I was writing everything down. I was keeping track of anything that was off or odd. Okay. Just, again, sort of what I do in my day job, so I was just doing it in my, personal life, too. That was sort of weird. We went home, things were fine, normal. We had, good conversations, and he was making sense. He wasn't irrational, nothing like that. Let's see. They finally got the note to the doctor, I believe Monday, so he was able to, or Friday, so he was able to go back to work on Tuesday. Okay. So he only worked Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And so, let's see, when was it? I mean, Friday night we went to my brother's hockey game, or my sister's hockey game. Fine. My parents saw him, my grandparents saw him. They were like, oh, a little, he would make some comments or like a little bit. Well, that was kind of odd, but it was sort of just like, I think, anxiety about things, and he was just dealing with it. But if I called him out on like a weird thing, he would be like, yeah, that was really weird. I don't know why I said that. Sunday we watched the Super Bowl at my parents'. Pretty much a typical day there. Like, he's pretty quiet. My family's very loud and sort of obnoxious. He just sits there and deals with it. And Monday, he ran a bunch of errands for me that I haven't had time to do. So I was like, oh, that was awesome. Went back to work on Tuesday. for like half of a day because he had his first appointment with a therapist up in Maple Grove at
Okay.
Langstrom and Associates. Went there. I think a lot of this was started from anxiety. And I think got super anxious. He gets really anxious talking to people because he felt like he wasn't a very good communicator.
Okay.
And he felt that he didn't communicate well to me or his parents, and that's why he got put in the hospital.
Oh my gosh. Again, it's just like certain words. He has so much anxiety, he doesn't feel like he's a really good communicator, probably because every time he opened his mouth, he was shut down. And we just have to go back to the fact that she prides herself on being a mental health professional, yet you're putting him in these situations where he's uncomfortable. You have him going to sporting events with your family where he's not wanting to speak to anybody, so he's anxious and off to the side. You go to a Super Bowl party at your parents' house where everyone, as you say it, is obnoxious. He's supposed to be getting rest, not off doing these things, not off doing errands for you. It's hard to listen to. It's so, so hard.
So there was a lot of anxiety about communication with therapists, doctors, like I said, keep me here, that sort of thing. So he had this appointment with the therapist, and I had offered to go with him, just for support. No, it's fine. Well, then I get home and I find out that he had went to Applevis, which is the Association for Lutheran Bible School. It's right in Plymouth.
Okay.
And he had went there for 2 years right out of high school, but he never graduated. Just due to like failing classes, he didn't have the credits to graduate. And he, all of a sudden, on Tuesday after meeting with this therapist, thought it would be a good idea to go back to the college and figure out how he could graduate from there. And so I was like, I sort of saw the connection, but something he would never want to do. Like, he was in the mindset of Applevis was sort of a waste of his time, because he's like, I went there, I didn't want to go there, but I didn't have anywhere else to go, and I spent 2 years dinking around, partying not there, it was a Bible school, but he had a lot of friends at the U. So he went down there, partied, smoked a lot of weed, drank a lot. So it was sort of just a wash for him. But he went there and he did that, and then he told me about it when I got home on Tuesday. He was like, he was very confused as to why he went there, why he thought that was a good idea, and he was very needy. He needed to talk to me about everything, and he wanted me to give him a lot of hugs and this affection and be very close. And so I did, and I talked to him, and he said, I don't have any idea. I got these weird thoughts. I got this weird thought in my head, and then I just acted on it without really thinking.
Okay.
And so that's why I felt he was sort of getting better, because he was able to recognize, that was really weird. I don't know why I did that. And then so I tried to encourage him, if you get a thought that you're interesting, write it down, and then look at it in 20 minutes and see if you still want to do that. Or call me and be like, I want to go to Applevis, and I'd be like, do you really? We could talk about it. So he's like, okay, yeah. And went to work on Wednesday. Things were fine. We had to drive to Delano to meet his parents to borrow a vehicle because his truck was getting fixed. Something was wrong with it. At a dealership just up in Plymouth that it was getting fixed at. So we drove there and drove home. Things were fine. He took his parents' car to work on a Thursday, and then had said that he was going to drive back to his parents' they live in Cokato, drop the car off and then have his dad drive him back home so that we could go get his truck. He said, I was like, that seems very ridiculous. But I'm not going to argue with it, I was like, wouldn't it be easy? Because I told him, I was like, I can't take any time off of work to drive you to work. But you have other coworkers that live in the area, couldn't you guys have one of them pick you up? No, it made more sense for him to go. And that's where I was like, that's really strange. They came back, and his dad had texted him Wednesday night. His dad was he was pretty rude to me. He yelled in my face a few times about him being in the hospital when he was in the hospital the first time, and decided that it was time for him to apologize after David had talked to him and David's sister had sort of told him he was out of line. And this was 2 weeks prior that this incident between his dad and I had happened. Okay. And so David was like, yeah, my dad wants to apologize. I had a terrible day at work on Thursday. Everything that went wrong, that could go wrong, went wrong. And I was just I don't want to deal with this. I just want to go home and snuggle with my dog and my husband and whatever. And so I get home, and David's like, yeah, my dad got sick, which is not probably true. But he just didn't want to come and apologize. So I said, okay, whatever. Yeah. And David's like, yeah, not surprised. So I said, yep, okay. So we sat there, and I'm in grad school too, so I did some homework, and David made dinner, and nothing out of the ordinary. Took Mosley, our dog, for a walk, came back in, fine, totally normal. And then everything just went nuts at 10:45.
Remember that she's saying that day at work, everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. She's come home, has the worst day ever, and now his dad's not coming to apologize to her. It's obvious just from her own words that his parents were quite a point of contention in the relationship. So I think it's really hard for them to listen to some of this because knowing how she would react, knowing the type of person she is and how their relationship was, the fact that he didn't come and apologize probably wasn't something that she just let go right away. It probably was the start of an argument or him having to listen to how poorly she's treated by them.
Okay.
Which I think what time it was.
All right. So just before we can move on to that piece of
Yeah.
it, like that week that he was home after getting out of the hospital, was he still using marijuana?
I never, so when he was in the hospital, my parents came down and we cleaned out, we looked through everything to find anything. I never found actual marijuana, but I did find like the pipe thing he smoked it in and a glove that he used to break it off the buds or something. I don't really know, but there was a glove and it breathed it, and it was all green. So I cleaned all of that stuff out of his truck, threw it away. Then we took all the alcohol out of our house, and I told him, I said, it's a sober house, if there's nothing, no chew, you can use a nicotine patch, nicotine gum, nothing. And he was in agreement, okay, yep. And then I never saw him use marijuana. I don't know.
Right.
We weren't on the same bank account for the reason that he didn't want to see me see him taking money out.
Sure.
Which he admitted to me in the hospital. He was like, I didn't want to be on the same bank because I had put him with married for 11 months. I was like, come on. And he was always like, no, I can't because of loans and I was like, whatever. I so don't want to argue with you about this. And so again, I don't know if he was. I never smelled it in his truck. I checked. I never smelled it on him. So if he was really good about hiding it, or he was doing it after I went to bed. Which I think was probably the time that he would do it, was after I went to bed. I can guess that he was drinking some, only because the day of his funeral, I found a 24-pack of beer in his truck, hidden under some stuff, and there was maybe 4 or 5 beers left in it.
Okay.
So I don't think he was drinking like a ton, but he probably,
so.
yeah. I don't remember seeing that in there prior to him being in the hospital. And then he was chewing. So, he felt really bad. He'd go and buy a can and then he'd throw it, but he wouldn't even open it, he'd throw it away. And then I was like, you got, buy something else, buy Mountain Dew, buy a snack, something. And then Thursday night he did give in, I guess, I don't know, and was like, I'm having a dip. And I was like, you're 24 years old, you're your own person, but you have to be aware that the consequence is that you're never going to quit chewing.
Right.
And he had like 4 dips, he would keep it in for an hour, like a long time. It wasn't just like a quick, and so it was almost all night he was chewing, and I finally went up to him and I was like, come on, you can do this, you're stronger than this. And then he ended up taking it out and then said, no, you're right, and he chewed gum or whatever, but yeah.
Okay, so back to the night that he killed himself. You said things kind of like haywire at 10:45.
Sometime, it was between 10:45 and maybe 10:50.
Okay.
We always watched 10 o'clock news, and so I called him to bed, and he was sitting just on the bed next to me watching the news, and I was kind of on my phone half watching the news, and then it was between 10:20 and 10:30. I was like, well, I'm tired, I'm ready to fall asleep. I'm gonna go to bed. Our dog lays there with us on bed. This is pretty typical. I normally go to bed before he does. And he said, you care if I keep watching the news? And I was like, no, it's fine. You can just turn it down because it's really loud. So I turned it down 2 notches. And I was like, no, I really am tired. I want to go to bed. And so he turned it down, and I had a little blanket that I just put over my eyes because he left his light on and the TV was on so I could fall asleep. Pretty normal. Would do this every night. And I do remember sort of waking up at one point, not waking up, just kind of stirring, and I noticed he was sitting at the end of the bed, which was sort of weird, but then I realized the volume was down so low, so we probably couldn't hear from the other side of the bed. So I'm like, whatever. And then I was just sort of dozing, not really asleep, but again, I didn't hear anything. Any movements from him. He is not a quiet person. He's loud. So I don't know how or why I didn't hear anything.
Okay.
Part of me thinks I didn't hear anything because had I tried to stop him, he probably would have hurt me.
Okay.
Because of the state he was in, the Friday he went to the hospital the first time, he was very angry with me, and that's sort of maybe that's just how I make peace with everything is that. So
again, so hard. He didn't ever threaten her. Even that night that he was gone to the hospital, he was naked. He was talking in tongues. He told her he knew she was evil. And in the same sense, he said that he forgave her for being evil and lying to him. There was never any threats. He was not a threat. So, just to throw that out there and paint him like, oh, if I would have woken up, he would have hurt me. It's hard.
That I heard him say, Emily, it's time to get up. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I said, I overslept, so I flipped the blanket off my face, and I don't even remember if the TV was on, but his bedside table light was on, and I looked at him, and he's completely naked. And I was like, I was super caught off guard, and I got up, and I was like, what? What's going on? And he's like, he just didn't look like himself. His mannerisms again were sort of off, and I was just like, okay. So I immediately So like, if this is our bed, I sleep on this side, and I have a bedside table here,
Okay.
and my phone was on the bedside table. So I had gotten up and sort of walked around the side end of the bed, and was like, what's going on? You know, and he just kept, it's time to go. It's time for you to go to your parents. Okay. So I immediately said, call 911. So I went to grab my phone. I walked back around the bed. He pushed me. He's never been aggressive. Grabbed my phone, and I said, oh, honey, I need my phone if I'm going to go to my parents. And he just said, you'll get it when you leave. Took his phone, went into the kitchen, and I could see, so like you saw our apartment up there. I could sort of see it just into the kitchen from the bedroom if the door was open. So I sort of walked out and I said, what's going on, David? Why do you want me to go to my parents? He wouldn't respond to his name. He also never calls me Emily. He normally he calls me Twix is what he calls me. So he normally would say that, or or, honey or whatever. Yep. Unless I was like very serious or he was like being dumb. So I was very like, that's weird, why are you calling me that? So then I turned back around, because I was just wearing pajamas. I went to get a shirt, and I saw his Bible sitting next to his bed. Again, very weird. Since the time we got home from the hospital, his Bible had sat untouched on the kitchen table. So I noticed, it triggered, and I was like, oh, what? I just kept like, what is going on? What's going on? I grabbed a tank top and a sweatshirt, and as I was doing that, I heard a splashing. What's that? So I came back into that first hallway, and I could see him holding this thing and dumping liquid onto himself. And then that's when I saw shaking. That's when I saw the light that indicates the top burner of the stove was on. Okay. And so he was standing facing the stove. Okay. Something that's behind that over here a little bit is our sink, and we have like one of those sprayer things. So my first reaction is get this off of him, Yeah. And so I reached for that, and he pushed me, and I got oil all in my hair. The smell's still not out. Down my arms, my entire front is covered. And I tried to grab.
So this is the first time that she talks about going back in. Again, this isn't the same flow of events as the first or what she shared with his family. She had told the first officer that he left the room, he started pouring the oil, she ran to go get the phone to call 911, and then this is when he grabbed it. Now, that is not how it happened. He had already grabbed them, then started pouring the oil, then she goes and sees what's going on, and then comes up to him to try to spray him off. Before it was that she was trying to get the lighter, and that's why he pushed her, but now it's pushing her because she's trying to spray him off. And from this shove, she got covered in oil, head to toe covered.
Phone, because I couldn't get to, he's a big guy. I couldn't get to the sprayer thing. And then I tried to grab my phone. He pushed me up against the door, and I just started screaming for help. Help, 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 help. He covered my mouth with his hand, and he's never aggressive. So this was so out of character for him. He wasn't holding me hard, but he was just trying to get my phone. So I went into the bathroom to rinse the oil off, because I thought if he lights this, I'm going up in flames too. So I was like, I need to get this off of my body. I didn't really realize that it was laying.
So her immediate thought is, if he lights this, I'm going to go up in flames too. She's against the door though. She can leave at any moment. The phone would not even be a priority in this. You're living in an apartment building. You pound on somebody's door for immediate help. Instead, it's to make sure that she rinses it off her arms, even though it's in her hair, it's on her shirt, it's on her shoes. She needs to rinse off her arms so that she doesn't go up in flames, because the situation is feeling so urgent to her that she's feeling that he's going to start a fire. But there's enough time to stop and do this instead of just run out of the apartment.
The front was covered. I just could feel it on my arm. Sure. So I ran into the bathroom, turned the water on, went like this, went back out, and that's when I saw like the little clicker lighter with the you light a candle. Oh, sure. I saw that, and I was just like, what? And while I was doing that in the bathroom, he had picked up the jug thing again and poured more oil.
Where was the lighter at?
It was sitting behind him on the counter. Okay. And so I reached for the lighter, to try and take it with me. Mm-hmm. We have many lighters in the house, but it was just right there. Right. So I tried to take it with me, and grab my phone. Again, he pushes me to grab the lighter, yell for help. So I'm sort of like up against the door, and I got my phone in one hand, I got a sweatshirt and the lighter, so he's trying to take the lighter. Doesn't care about my phone at this point, just the lighter. He grabs the lighter, but he still sort of pushes me a little bit. I'm able to reach up and grab a key off of our key ring thing. I was able to grab the door handle, open the door, and he pretty much just pushed me outside, and I was able to call for our puppy. Mosley, come. As soon as the door shut, I'm on my phone. I started screaming for help. There was a gentleman who lives in the building that was in the hallway. He said, what's wrong? I said, he's starting a fire. Got to get out. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how big the fire was going to be, honestly how small it was going to be. my dog ran into their apartment, so I had to like get him out.
So they live a little bit across from you?
Next door.
Oh, next door.
Yeah. So
Again, he's going to start a fire. I don't know how big or small it's going to be. Something to note that I mentioned in the last video is that when she found out that the fire was quite contained into just that one spot in the kitchen, she was really surprised that it was so small.
So yeah, there's only one. Yeah. Grabbed him and said, oh, my dog. Got him. And I thought I had my vehicle key, but I actually grabbed David's. And so I was running because I keep my car. David keeps his car out front in the front parking lot, but I kept mine in the garage. So I was running down to the garage to get my car. Called 911, dispatcher picked up, gave them address, all that. Realized when I got to the door, because of the garage you have to unlock with this, I did have my keys. And for a split second, I started to run back to the apartment. I was like, no, can't do that. Went outside door, my dog took off. So
oh my gosh, it's so hard. I mean, you just have to bring yourself back in and realize she's talking about this painful, graphic, unbearable, painful death of her husband. And it's like, oh, I was going to go back and get my keys. You felt comfortable enough to go back and get your keys? Why did you need your keys that bad? First of all, the key thing, it drives me crazy. And then your thoughts as you're running back is, oh, no, can't go that way. Got to go out the side and run out the front. It's just, I've said it so many times in this video. This is so hard to listen to.
Talked to the dispatcher, trying to get my dog, got my dog. And then pretty much by the time I got back to David's truck, which was parked in the front, I could hear sirens. I was standing outside when, I don't even remember her name, but the responding officer got up there. Yes, Nellie. And she got there and she started running. I ran over to her and I said, I'm the one that called my husband. And I forgot to mention that there was, when my dog ran into the other apartment, I looked back and there was just a little trickle of smoke.
Okay.
And I don't know, obviously I wasn't there. I don't know if he had already lit the fire, if it was us flashing because, and again, I haven't been back. I'm not going back to the apartment, but my mom did say that the burners looked like they had gotten oil on them. And so she said it could have just been a splashing, from that. It could have been the fire. And so then I put my dog in his truck and then talked to Molly for what seems like an eternity. And then sat with her in the car for a while, called my parents right away, called his parents, because I called my mom, because I was like, I don't know what's going on, don't have a great relationship with his parents, come down here. So she's on her way. Shortly after that, I got a call from the hospital that said I needed to come down right away. So Molly drove me down and I called his parents right away.
Okay. I mean, I think you answered most of my questions.
I talk a lot, so I'm
That's
sorry.
good. No, that's good. That's good. You hit everything. I don't think there's anything else I had really. The big thing was just kind of, I wanted to find out what was going on kind of leading up to this, and was he back to the marijuana and the alcohol? Was he taking his meds like he was supposed to?
And I should mention too, one of my best friend's moms is a police officer. I don't know where St. Paul is. But she did come over to the apartment and help my mom go through some stuff and sort of told my mom, like, check the freezer, check different places where he may have hidden drugs. My mom checked, she didn't find anything anywhere. And we looked.
I love how that is just bypassed over. I should mention that my best friend's mom is a cop and went to the apartment with my mom to look for drugs and alcohol.
Through his entire truck and didn't find anything. So there wasn't any obvious signs that he was using again. But again, if you want it, you'll figure out a way to get it.
You will, absolutely. In the marijuana, it doesn't explain what happened.
No.
I know that they have studied this, and there's some linkage between mental illness and marijuana, but my God, this is like the extreme case. I've never seen anything like this before.
No.
That was just so sudden.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think I knew David when he was really young, and then again, throughout some of his adulthood, and I think he really struggled with anxiety and depression, and chose to cope with drugs and alcohol and stuff, and so it wasn't really ever addressed in a healthy way.
Sure.
And it just sort of built up and built up and built up and built up. And
was he diagnosed with anything when he was at Fairview?
No. So like his discharge paperwork basically said he was brought in with substance-induced psychosis versus psychotic spectrum disorder, which covers schizophrenia, schizoaffective, and bipolar. But they sort of chalked it up to substance-induced because I think he came down so quickly.
Okay. But
they never really said. He did get a printout of the notes from that session with the therapist, and he let me read them, and they basically said more sessions needed to make a diagnosis, because there wasn't really, one time it didn't really tell you anything.
Okay.
So, yeah, I'm not. I don't know. I mean, I wish that there was, because it would make this a lot easier to understand.
Right.
But my guess is it had to be some kind of bipolar or something with the mania of the everything's great.
Yep.
And he even and he even said himself he was really struggling with understanding how the medications were affecting him, and he was really kind of gripped with this thought that they were going to cause these terrible side effects later in his life. And he had looked up. I finally said, just Google it. Like, granted, I don't trust everything on Google, but like you can look for the sites that will give you the more, the better information. And he did, and he said, okay, well, it's used to treat. He was reading all these different things that this drug is used to treat, and he said, okay, well, bipolar. Yeah, I probably had that. And I was like, I didn't even know you knew what that was. So that sort of stuck with me that he, some part of him sort of knew that something was wrong. And I mean, it's really terrible that that it had to happen like this, but. I mean, it's, and I think I feel very strongly that, he came back. That wasn't really him. He was sort of gone from his body, so to say. Like, his body was just going through these motions of this crazy, crazy thought that came into his head. And he sort of came back. He himself, David, came back to save me and to get me and my dog out and okay. And then the minute the door shut, there David went, and there his body went.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
So I guess most of my questions are just about the death certificates, and I don't even know if you know anything if you can answer that. I just can't do anything. I'm sort of stuck because we're not on the same accounts. So I've had death certificates to get access to all of that.
So I haven't received the medical examiner's report either. They'll obviously be the ones that sign the death certificates.
Okay.
I don't know what's taking.
This is the additional question. Wondering when all of his death certificate stuff is going to come, because for right now she doesn't have access to his accounts. I don't know if this is more triggering for me because the last case that we did, this was the main focus point of the story. Her desperation to get this death certificate so that she could access his accounts and get life insurance, but this just jumped up at me.
So long, other than maybe they're waiting on toxicology reports.
And I had talked to them, I don't know, probably Friday at 4 a.m. or something, and they did say that it could take 4 to 6 weeks for the tox results. I guess I just wasn't under the impression that it would take that long to also get the death certificates, which is, understandable.
I think in a case, sometimes they sign the death certificate and they'll rule on the cause of manner of death before they have the toxicology back. But in this case, they probably want to wait just due to the circumstances. They want probably all the pieces of the puzzle before they make that final call. That's the only thing I can think of. As soon as they can, I'm sure they'll get it signed and you'll get a copy of it. That's the one piece I'm waiting for yet. From our perspective, it's a suicide. It's unfortunate. This one was extremely dramatic and affected a lot of people, obviously. But, really, when it boils down to it, I need the medical examiner's report, and there's a report that will be coming from the state fire marshal's office, because they sent an investigator out that night, too. I don't know how in-depth their reports are. It's pretty evident what happened, so it's not like a big mystery that needs to be solved. So I'm waiting for that, and, at that point, I will...
Oh my gosh, it's so hard. It is so hard to listen to. Completely have their minds made up, completely wrote off any of the Elmquist family's concerns. This isn't even, nothing she said is even going to be looked at. You can get that right there. I've gotten to know David's family, and just putting myself in their shoes, I messaged his sister while I was listening to this, and I said, I'm physically feeling like I have to be sick right now. I can't imagine what they have felt when they lost David, feeling like they were up against the world and nobody was listening to them.
My report, and this will be closed out. So I try and, answer the questions that the parents have. They're searching for a reason why this happened. And, we may not ever know. That answer is, I'm not ever going to have that answer.
No. And I would agree. It's too much of a situation to really fully understand what you're asked, and especially if you weren't super keen on the idea of a mental illness. I can imagine that it's much harder to understand.
That's not even true.
From their perspective, and you too, this kind of all unfolded pretty quickly. It's not like this has been going on since he was 15. But this is also very common. It's also very common for the onset of mental illness to happen in your early mid-20s. So,
he wasn't out of that age range.
No. So.
I miss him, but I have a piece that he's okay now. And sucks, but I have a huge support system, so I'm doing okay.
If you do have any questions, concerns, give me a call.
That's the end of the interview. I miss him. but I have peace. It sucks, but I have a huge support system. The last interview that we are going to listen to took place on August 22nd, 2018. And this is with the fire marshal.
Today's date is Wednesday, August 22nd, 2018. Current time is 12:11 hours. And can you give me your first and middle and last name, please?
My name is Emily Corrine Mannanen.
And your date of birth?
05/30/1994.
Okay. And this is in reference to a fire that occurred in your property at 3301 Highway 169 in Plymouth, Minnesota. The fire actually occurred back in February. So I've got a sheet that I've also...
She's changed her name back to, I don't know if anybody caught that. Not that it's a big deal. Maybe that's too painful to have it. If she has done no wrongdoing, maybe she just wanted to go back. But when I first heard that, I was like, oh, okay.
So given you also some questions, so I just want to go through these real quick and get your answers to it. Anytime during the questioning, if you decide you want to talk to me, by all means, you can actually say if you don't want to talk to me anymore, we can shut this down and you're free to leave. Okay. With that in mind, are you willing to talk to me?
Yes.
Okay. And if any time during the questioning you've got any questions for me, by all means, go ahead and question. So the first question we're going to talk about is at any time during the evening that did David begin to act strange? I'm talking about the night of the fire.
I didn't notice anything that was super out of the ordinary from about week before, after he had gotten out of the hospital. He woke me up at like 10:45 or 10 something, 50, I'm not exactly sure. And he was completely naked and he told me it was time to go. And that was really kind of like when it all started, when he started acting strange. I didn't notice anything before. He hadn't eaten dinner, which was a little bit odd, but I didn't think it was that out of the ordinary.
Let's go back just a little bit in that day.
That's really important too. So now she's telling him that he never ate dinner. In previous interviews, she has said that he didn't eat dinner. Then she told him he had to have dinner, made him eat dinner.
Can you tell me from about the time that you got home to the time that he got home and kind of what transpired?
I probably got home from work a little before 5. I believe I was working on some homework for grad school, and he took our dog. There was a dog park not super far. He would normally drive him over there and play for an hour and a half while I worked on homework when I got home. He and I talked for a little while when he got back. He was still like really processing through a lot of things from when he was in the hospital and trying to kind of get a grasp on this like treatment plan that was in place. If I remember,
this, I believe, is also the only time that she said that he left and went to the dog park. She does mention in previous interviews that at the end of the night, he took him for a quick walk to go to the washroom. In other interviews, she's really kind of connected them throughout the evening, making it seem like it was a typical night. There was nothing out of the ordinary. He cooked for her. She had a bath. He had a bath. In one interview, he had 2 baths. In all of them, he seems to be at home. And then after, it's almost like when she found out that his family had questions, she's really tried to distance them from each other at the house that evening. So now he's gone to the dog park while she's studying.
Correctly, that was the day that he went to the school, but I don't know if that's right. But we talked about it that night when he had went to the Appleby school to talk to the minister about going back, and we had discussed it a little bit, but he kind of brushed it off. We talked about his time in North Dakota. I think he was missing some of his friends from out there. Then he wanted to make me dinner. He made me dinner. He wasn't hungry, so he didn't really eat a lot. And then he wanted to take a bath, which wasn't super out of the ordinary, a little bit odd. So he took a bath, and then I believe he went down, our apartment had a sauna. I believe he went and turned that on and went in there for a little bit, which was very normal for him, and then jumped to the indoor pool, dumped in that, came back.
So now he's gone after his bath, went to the sauna, went to the pool. He's basically not home. Do you know what I mean though? Like it's very distant now.
He said he wasn't feeling great, but I reminded him he hadn't had dinner, so he ate, and that was pretty late, 9:30, I don't know exactly. We sat on the couch with our dog after that and watched Planet Earth, which was super normal. And then while he was eating, I remember like I got annoyed because he was chewing his food really loud, and that drives me crazy. So for a little bit, I went into the bedroom and was working on homework in there, and was pretty tired from the days.
Again, something new that she's bringing up, and it's almost like she has to admit just to, I don't know, like make herself feel better that she doesn't want to admit that there was like an argument, but does want to take responsibility for her getting upset about certain things. So it's like, okay, she was upset about his dad not coming and apologizing, but then it was like fine. And then now she's upset because he was chewing so loud and annoyed. So she went to a different room to like leave him alone. And it's like, okay, in my mind, it's like those points in the evening there were probably arguments, and that there is some truth to how the flow of the evening went, but those arguments probably had something different behind them. But she's just trying to almost be like, okay, I'm cooperative, I'm willing to share this information with you.
Before, and so I was getting ready for bed. He came in there, we turned the news on, very normal, sat and watched the news, 10 o'clock news, I think. And then I had told him that I was going to go to sleep, and asked him to just turn the volume down. And he did. And then he like sat on the end of the bed and watched the news for a little bit. And I had put like a blanket or something like over my eyes because the light from the TV was really bright. And then I dozed off, and the next thing I know, he was waking me up.
What happened at that time?
He woke me up. I was very dazed. He was completely naked. And he just kept saying, Emily, it's time for you to go. It's time for you to go. So I like shot out of bed. I was very confused, trying to figure out why I was naked, trying to figure out why I needed to go. I walked like out of our bedroom into like the hallway and was like looking into the kitchen area. And that is when I noticed that the stove burners were on, and like there was this jug sitting there. And I walked back to the bedroom to grab my cell phone.
So again, the story's changing now. She doesn't reach for anything. There's not really like a concern of her like starting to get dressed and then hearing oil pour all of a sudden like it had been. Now she gets up, goes to the kitchen, sees that there's just a jug like sitting there ominously waiting. Then she comes back to the bedroom.
And he had grabbed it before me, and his cell phone as well. So we had both of our phones. And so I was trying to talk to him, and I just said like, David, just talk to me. What's going on? And he just kept repeating, like, it's time for you to go. You need to go to your parents. I said, why don't you just come with me? Let's both go to my parents. He just kept repeating that. And then when I saw that he had my phone, I was like, well, David, I need my phone, if I'm going to go to my parents. And he just told me that I could get it when I left. And so I like quickly ran into the bedroom to get clothes. And that is when he was in the kitchen. Both of our phones were sitting behind him. That's when, I saw the lighter, and he started pouring the oil over himself.
Where was the lighter at?
I believe it was on the counter behind him.
So on
there was
the
like
side of the dishwasher?
Yeah, on that side, I believe. Because when I saw him pouring the oil, I reached behind him where the sink was, and there's like a sprayer. That was just like my first instinct to like get the oil off of him. So I reached for that. So I got pretty covered in oil myself.
Did you ever get to the sprayer?
I think I maybe grabbed it, but I didn't, like I couldn't turn the sink on and use it.
Okay, did you ever pull it out of its holder?
I think so.
Okay.
And I also tried to grab the lighter because it was like close by, or grab the lighter like as I was getting pushed away from the sink. And it was at that point where David pushed me kind of back towards like where the front door was, and I was kind of close to that. And I screamed help a couple of times, and he put his hand over my mouth. And he's a big kid. And his arm was like this over my mouth, and he kind of pushed me against the door. And he was trying to grab the lighter out of my hand. And so he did that. I don't remember if he said anything at that point. At that point, I went back into the bathroom because I was I was covered in oil myself. And so I was trying to get it off of my body. I turned the sink on, and I tried to like wipe my arms off. Again, that was just like where my mind was at. I went back to the front, and I just kept telling, like David was again like pouring it over himself with this very odd expression, and I just kept telling him like, you don't need to do this. And it was at that point that I tried to like stop him from pouring it, and he kind of pushed me again. I was able to grab my phone. He was basically forcing me out of the door, and I was able to grab a key from we had a small key thingy by the door, grab a key. The door got open. I yelled for my dog, and we were out in the hallway. Door shut. I started screaming for help. And there was a neighbor guy that kind of was like running down the hallway, and he's saying, what do you need? I said, my husband is starting a fire. I don't know what's going on. I need help. So he had opened their apartment door, and I don't remember if I like said, take my dog. Can you take my dog? But mostly our dog kind of like ran into their apartment, and I remember being like, no, my dog. And at that point I was getting my phone to like dial 911. My dog and I like took off. I thought I had my vehicle key, but I actually had David's. And so I was taking off towards the garage where my vehicle was. And by the time I got to the door, I realized I had his key, which didn't have, there was like a locked door to get into the garage, and he didn't use the garage. So I had called 911 already running down the hallway, got a hold of, or dispatch picked up right away. And then once I realized that I had David's key, and I was just trying to get out of the apartment building, so we went out like a side door, and I was still on the phone, and my dog took off. And I remember like yelling for my dog, and whoever was talking to me on dispatch was just telling me to like calm down, be calm, whatever. And I like remember being like, I need to get my like I have a huge golden retriever. I don't have a leash. And so I was able to get him to come. So I held him by the leash, was on the phone with dispatch. And at this time I was like on the other side of our garage apartment building, which was pretty far from our actual unit. And so I stayed on the phone with her for a little bit more of the walk, and then I could hear the sirens already, and made it back to the truck. I put Mosley in the truck, and then I like waited outside. There, hung up with dispatch. I called my mom right away and said, like, I don't know what's going on. Something really bad, something really bad is happening. And then pretty much right after that, there's a few people that started coming out of the apartment, and then the responding officer was there. And so I ran to that person who was going towards the apartment and just said, like, I made the call. It's my husband who's in the apartment. And so she stayed with me and was asking me the questions of layout and different things, like what was going on inside the apartment. And I don't, is that enough for that question? Does that answer?
Yep.
Okay.
Do you think that David put oil on you on purpose?
I think that is really important, where she doesn't want to go any further in terms of talking about like those immediate questions, like the layout. And she's probably asking, does he have weapons? Is he a threat? And she had said yes, and saying that he has access to knives in the house and is not wanting that to be recorded. She says in so many other interviews, I like to talk. She's talking. She provides all the details. And it's like when it's getting up to that detail, she's kind of slowing herself down, hoping that she's going to be stopped, and then stops herself.
He didn't pour it on me. He was pouring it on himself, and I just was trying to get it. So I just basically got like a residual on me from it getting on him.
So do you think his intent was to light you on fire also?
No.
Okay. Well, you said the door was open. Did you open up the door, or did David open up the door?
I think that we both kind of like were reaching for it. I don't remember like who actually opened the door. I was trying to grab the key, and he was kind of by me. He's much taller than me. If he didn't want me to leave, he could have very easily blocked the door. He didn't.
Was the door locked as you were trying to go out of it?
No.
When you were talking to dispatch on the phone, did they mention that anyone else had already called in the fire?
No.
Okay.
Not that I remember.
Had David ever mentioned anything about hurting himself prior to this incident?
No, never.
When he was being looked at for mental health issues, did anyone ever say that he may be suicidal?
No. From what I knew from the doctors, I didn't have a release of information until the end of his hospital stay. Like the notes that he brought home from the doctors, they all said like he was not suicidal.
Okay. What did you do or say to help him while he was acting strange?
I was just trying to talk very calmly. I was just trying to get him to kind of look at me and listen to what I was saying. But I wouldn't say that it helped him, because he was very, it like was not him. Like,
another thing I think we just need to bring up is, what were you doing to try to get his attention? And then I'm trying to get him to look at me. And she's admitted in other interviews, her way of getting him to focus and look at her and pay attention is to slap him. So not that she says it, but given the track record, I mean, that's assumption, but.
He never called me Emily. He always called me Toots or Babe or something, or M more than Emily, unless he was being like really serious. And he like wouldn't respond to his name. Like I just kept saying David, honey, David, and he like he wasn't registering that I was talking to him almost.
Have you ever noticed anything that might have been a trigger that could have put him into this type of, for lack of a better word, psychosis?
Yeah, I really don't know. I've tried to think about that. I know that he was stressed about work and money and things. I don't think it was to that point. He really enjoyed his job. He worked for a small company that works on water wells. He really liked his co-workers and his boss. They were talking a lot about figuring out ways for him to kind of stay with the company and move up. He was really getting excited because he had talked to his, I don't know if it was his boss or supervisor or what his role was, but about, what he had went to school for. And David was pretty excited about possibly looking into that and maybe pursuing that and like continuing, but moving up with the company.
Okay. Did David ever try and hurt you?
Like that night?
Ever?
There was one incident, my 21st birthday. We had gone out in downtown Minneapolis, and David got pretty intoxicated and got angry with me, and he did push me, and I fell back and hit my head on like a dresser in the hotel room. But other than that, no.
So there was no police reports or anything on that?
No.
Do you think that night, while he was holding you, he was trying to hurt you?
No, I think that he was trying, when I had the lighter, I think he was trying to get the lighter back. I don't think that it had anything to do with me.
The lighter itself, so you initially saw that on the counter behind him over by the dishwasher. Mm-hmm. Any idea where that lighter ended up?
I know from my mom in talking with her that when she went into the apartment the next week to start boxing things up, she noticed that the lighter was laying somewhere over by the kitchen table, which was pretty far distance. And when she was picking up garbage and things, she had moved it onto the counter that was closer, I think, to the stove.
What kind of lighter was it?
It was just like one of those Bic lighters.
Like what's it called, like a Scripto type lighter?
Yeah, like you just click it, like you use for your grill or something.
Okay.
We did speak about this in the first video that I did, where I'm just mind blown that her mom finds this lighter, doesn't call the police. This is the lighter that can dispel a lot of questions. You know, this lighter has never been found. So allegedly, this lighter had been found by her mom in the house under the table, and she put it on the counter, and it was never seen again.
Did David say anything as he was pouring oil on himself?
I don't remember if he said anything while he was pouring the oil. I know that he did use a phrase like "it's time." When he did wake me up, I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, but he did say like "it's time." He just kept saying "it's time."
What do you think he meant by that?
I don't know. It's time for him to go. I really don't know.
Okay. How many times did David pour oil on himself?
I saw him pour oil on himself, I believe 2 times. Yes, 2 times.
And then the one time you went in the bathroom and tried to wash it off?
Of myself, because it had gotten on me. So that was the first time that he poured the oil. And then I went into the bathroom to try and wash off my arms. And then he started pouring like what was left in the jug.
Did David have anything in his hands when you left?
I don't remember. He may have had the lighter in his hands, but I don't remember for sure if he did.
Did David push you out the door, or did you open the door?
I believe that I started to open the door, and then I do remember that he did kind of push at me to get out a little bit. Obviously that's the direction I was going. He didn't like force me out of the apartment per se.
Okay. Did he say goodbye to you before he pushed you out the door?
No.
What were his last words to you?
To me directly, he was saying that I needed to go to my parents, but his last words were "it's time."
Was the apartment on fire when you left the apartment?
When I left the door, no, but I remember looking back as I was running down the hallway, and I did see like a few wisps of smoke coming out from under the door.
So you didn't see any active fire? You didn't see him light himself on fire at that
No.
time? Did you attempt to re-enter the apartment after you got out?
No.
When did you call 911?
As soon as I got out of the apartment, I yelled help. The neighbor was right there, grabbed my dog, and I was already dialing 911, so right away.
So you were with a neighbor at the time when you were calling?
I was like running down the hallway, so the neighbor was like coming down the hallway at me. He said, "What's going on?" I said, "My husband is starting a fire. I don't know what's going on. I need help." Something happened with my dogs. He got into their apartment, like just in the entryway, got him out, and I was dialing 911 and then running right after that.
Did you ever say to the neighbor about David trying to light you on fire?
No.
Prior to you seeing the oil jug in the kitchen, where was that oil jug located at in the apartment?
I have no idea.
You've never seen it before?
Unless, he kept oil in his, like he had all these Gatorade bottles of oil from out in the oil field that he like kept, I don't know why. And when we moved into this apartment, he had several of them. And when we moved into this apartment, I was like, you need to get rid of those. Like we can't have those in an apartment. That's a huge liability. And I never saw the Gatorade bottles. Maybe I saw the jug in his in his truck or something, but I don't think I did. Because if I did, probably would have said something, but I did not recognize it.
What were you wearing when you left the apartment?
I had on a tank top, pajama pants. I had grabbed a sweatshirt from my room, and I had boots on, like not winter boots, just like slip-on boots.
Okay. Did David ever talk about his visit with his parents and that he needed a break from your relationship and wanted to move home?
He did talk about his visit with his parents. He did not mention directly that he wanted a break from our relationship. He talked very briefly about moving home with his parents, but it, again, was very brief. Kind of just like, I did mention that to my parents. But
when was that conversation?
I'm not sure. I don't remember.
Was it the day of the incident or maybe that week?
It was definitely that week. I don't remember if we talked about that day.
Every detail thus far, she knows, she remembers. The most important question that needs to be answered, all of a sudden, she can't remember if they spoke about it that night or earlier on in the week. I'm going to go out on a limb here and say it was that night. I'm going to assume it was not a conversation that was very brief It's a pretty big conversation to have. And he had only talked to his parents about moving that same day. So it couldn't have been earlier on in the week because he only saw them that day and talked to them about it that day. And when his mom asked him, what do you think Emily is going to say when she finds out that you want to have a divorce? He said she is going to go ballistic, meaning that he had not brought it up prior to the week because he's saying when she finds out, she's going to be really upset.
Do you know that he'd been talking to his dad about possibly divorce and then moving back in with them?
No.
So he never mentioned that to you?
Mm-mm.
Okay. When did you notice a change in David's behavior?
He moved back to Minnesota in July, and he was pretty lazy, which was really weird for him. He didn't really do a whole lot around the house, which was a point of contention. But he was trying to find a job, but he wasn't finding one, and that was pretty frustrating for him. And then he started working for this company like the end of September, and then he started to like perk up again and act more himself. As far as like this type of behavior, I did not notice it until Friday when we took him to the hospital, which was, I don't remember the date, the 19th of January, I think it was. And that was the biggest change. The Thursday before we took him to the hospital, he was very kind of sporadic in his thinking. When he was talking, he was really super all over the place. He kind of was all over the place in general, but this was like even more so. That Friday morning, I woke up to go to work, and he had said like, I need to drive you to work. And I thought there was a snowstorm or something. And I was like, oh, did it snow? And he was like, no, I just need to drive you to work. I was like, no, I'll be fine. Like, I have 4-wheel drive. I work just 15 minutes down the road. I'll be okay. And then he was like, okay. I left, and by the time I drove down 169 to work, 15, 20 minutes at most, I had 6 missed calls from him when I got to work, which was very odd. So I called him back, and he just said that he was worried that I wasn't going to make it to work. And so I told him, I made it, I'm fine. And so that was pretty odd. But I didn't really know at this point, like, what was going on. It had only happened that sort of odd with me that one time. So that was kind of the first time where it was pretty weird.
Okay. Did David have any problems when he was in North Dakota? What do you mean by problem? Were you with him in North Dakota?
Yes,
Okay,
for a little bit.
Did he have any issues that occurred while he was in North Dakota as far as anything that you noticed that was odd or anything that was work-related that could have been an issue?
When he first started working, I wasn't out there with him, but he did break his arm on the job, and that was pretty hard. Had only been working for like 2.5, 3 months at the time, and so he was like, pretty down in the dumps about that. But once he got healed, he picked up where he left off, and he did fine. I know that he drank a lot when he was out there.
Was that before or after you were there?
So, probably mostly before, and then after. So I lived out there for 3 months. One summer, moved back to school, and was in school from the end of August to December, moved back out to North Dakota the end of December, and then was there. So this would have been January 2016 to...
So this is prior to you being married to him?
Mm-hmm, okay. Yeah, so we got engaged December of 2015. So we were engaged when I lived out there. So I lived there from January 2016 to like the end of July, beginning of August of 2016, and then I moved back to Minnesota. And while I was out there, he drank, but a few times, it was a little excessive, but not super frequently. Other than that, I don't know of any big problems. I imagine when I wasn't there, he drank a lot more than I was aware of because I wasn't there.
When you were out there, were you guys living together at that time?
I lived with his sister for the summer of the 3 months, and I would stay. He lived in a town like about 35 minutes from his sister, and I would stay there with him some of the time, not all the time. And then when I was there from January to August, I lived with his sister's husband's grandma. He lived on the property, so I did stay with him frequently.
Okay. Prior to going to the hospitals, when you actually brought David in the hospital with his parents, had you discussed David's mental health with your mother?
I'm sure it came up in topics of discussion. There were points kind of in that when he had moved back that July where he was like not doing anything, so I was a little bit concerned about that. But mental health is something I'm pretty interested in. I take pretty seriously, and so I definitely tried to keep tabs on what was going on with David. But I think there was a lot that happened in North Dakota I wasn't aware of that affected his mental health. When you're working 15-hour days and you're on your feet all day long and you drink all night, there's something that happens in your brain.
So again, I just want to reiterate that his family who was with him had never seen him happier than when he was out there. Like I said, of course, he had some drinks after work. He loved his long days. He loved the work that he was doing. He loved being out there. None of his family saw any of this odd behavior while he was out there. It was when he came back home, he started to deteriorate.
Is there someone I should be contacting out in North Dakota to kind of find out if there was anything going on out there? Anyone you could think of?
He was, I don't know, he was really close with a guy named he worked with. They hung out a lot. He may know more about what happened in North Dakota. His brother Eric works out there. He worked with his brother for a long time, who was his brother-in-law. He and David, I feel, were pretty close. They got along really well and hung out. David lived on their property. David lived for a few months with a guy named Derek, who he also worked with, and they lived in an apartment together just for a couple of months before David moved back home.
What was David's reason for coming back to Minnesota?
That was kind of our agreement when we got engaged. I didn't want to live out there forever. It was not the type of lifestyle that I was looking for. And so he came back to get a job here and start life here, and at least get started together, because we actually got married in March and then he didn't come home until July. So we did 4 months of long distance marriage, which was not very fun. And then he came home so we could try and figure out where we wanted to be. And then and because I'm also finishing my master's degree at St. Thomas, so it worked out for me to finish that and work here, and for him to come home and try that out.
Okay. When David was released from the hospital, what directions were you given for his care?
When he was released, because he was not deemed a vulnerable adult, I went to the I don't know what the word is. We met with a nurse that kind of went over things. Fairview Riverside they have I think she's a social worker, kind of like a case manager for the patients, and she had been meeting with David and talked with me a couple of times once they had the release, or once David had signed the release for me, and she let me know that they had scheduled an appointment for him with a therapist at Nystrom and Associates. I think it was a few days after, a week after he got released, and then he would also go to Nystrom and Associates for his medication management, and they had already scheduled his first appointment there, which was sometime near the end of February.
Were you responsible for making sure that he took care of medications, or responsible for his well-being at all? Were you told that?
No, I was not told that I was. I went to the meeting because I was his wife and I was picking him up, and so that I could be aware of the information. He was also given 30 days worth of risperidone that he was to take once a day, a 3 milligram dosage at night. And so that's what I knew, and that's what I was told by the nurse and case manager.
Were you there when he was taking his medications?
At home?
Yes.
I made myself a presence when he was. I would happen to be in the bathroom at the same time. He appeared to be taking them. We had a lot of conversations about medications and how they can be helpful and why they're important. And he seemed to be on board and understanding why he should be taking them, and how they could help him feel better and get back to where he wanted to be.
When's the last time that you know he took his medications up to the night of the fire?
The night of the fire, I had been in the bathroom and he got his pill out and he took it. I was brushing my teeth or whatever, and then I double checked with him a little bit later. So did you take your pill? And he said yes. So it appeared that he did. He told me that he did, but I know that in the hospital he hadn't been taking his medications. So that's all I know.
Knowing that you'd seen the autopsy report did not have any indication of any type of medications that were in the system. Mm-hmm. Any reason why that you could think of for that? I'm
not sure. I know in talking with Sergeant Bird, he mentioned that it's possible the dosage or what he was taking wasn't a high enough narcotic that it would show up in his system through the autopsy report. But I hadn't pursued that any further. So I'm not sure why it didn't show up, if there was a reason for that.
Okay. When you appeared before a judge with David to determine whether or not he was going to be kept at the hospital or released, mm-hmm. I know he had an attorney. Mm-hmm. Who paid for that attorney?
I do not know.
There was nothing that you paid for, or David's family or anybody?
Not that I'm aware of. I was just it was a attorney appointed by a county or the hospital. I'm not sure. I never received a bill for it unless it was counted into his hospital stay bill.
Did that attorney meet with you before meeting with a judge?
He didn't really meet with me. I happened to be sitting out, waiting to go in, and he stopped by and just said that he was so-and-so for David, and then asked if I felt comfortable saying that, David was ready to go home. And I said, yeah, I think he's doing a lot better. He seems to be taking his medications. He seems to be understanding why it's important. And I didn't feel that David would try to, I didn't feel like he was like a threat to himself or anybody else based on his behavior and based on what the doctors had said. That he, they asked him, do you have thoughts of whatever they ask people in the hospital? And he did not have those thoughts of suicide or harming people.
Do you know if the attorney talked to David's parents before he got into the courtroom?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Did David's parents have any say whether or not he'd be released?
I don't believe so. I don't really know. I know that David signed the release for Scott a couple days after going into the hospital, so Scott was able to communicate with doctors, and I imagine the attorney if he wanted to. I don't know that. I mean, Scott chose not to come to the court hearing, so I don't know if he would have been there. They would have had him go up on stand. I'm not sure.
Okay. There was an incident that occurred at a wedding that Scott brought forward, something about you flicking off David in front of the family.
So that was at his brother's wedding in early September, and there was like a reception area and there was a bar on another side, and David kept like disappearing, and I kept trying to find him, and I happened to walk around. He was by the bar, and I didn't flick them off. I like threw my hands up in the air, like, what are you doing? And it must have appeared that way, because I was like, you're talking to a bunch of girls over here, and I want to hang out with you.
My understanding is it was not him just gallivanting at the bar with a bunch of girls. He was at the bar with family. They hadn't seen each other in quite a while, and it was just everybody, catching up. Knowing the actual story, just, hearing this kind of reinforces the control and then the manipulation of how to like turn a story to paint him poorly.
Do you know of any mental health problems in David's family?
Other than his mom taking an antidepressant medication, I know that his brothers have really struggled with like substance use things. I know sometimes that can fall under a mental health category. But other than that, I don't know specifically. An uncle or several of his uncles have struggled with drinking. One passed away because of things related to his drinking. But I don't know of any major mental health concerns within his immediate family. His family is pretty closed off to talking about that.
Why would his mom be taking an antidepressant?
She was diagnosed with breast cancer about 8 years ago, I believe, and was put on an antidepressant then, and took it for several years and then kind of weaned off of it. And then there were some stressful times in the family when his oldest brother was getting married, and then she started taking it again then.
Okay, so it's pretty much because of her previous cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How often did David talk to his parents?
Prior to going to the hospital, pretty rarely. He didn't really enjoy talking to his parents. He would frequently say that they just talk about themselves, or they just call me to, talk about their trip or their latest tennis racket or their latest bike, as for Scott, in Scott's case. He would probably talk to them maybe once every couple weeks, once a month. We didn't see them super often because it was hard to be around them for extended periods of time. David would just get really frustrated. And then once this all started happening, he was really, I don't want to say stuck on his parents, but sort of. He called them a lot. He wanted to see them a lot.
I just want to use David's own words that he said to his parents the day that he died, when he went to go and tell them that he was going to ask for a divorce and wanted to move back home. David didn't talk to his family a lot prior to him passing or prior to him going through this bout of psychosis because he wasn't allowed to. We know from the conversation that he had with his parents on the day that he died, he told his mom that his wife, was manipulative. She keeps me from you. I'm not allowed to see or talk to you guys. And he said the marriage was toxic.
When he was in the hospital, he called them frequently. When he got out of the hospital, he called them several times that night to just chit chat about things, which was pretty out of character for him. Yeah.
Okay.
That's so hard to hear because she's saying, he was stuck on his parents after he got out of the hospital, and that's so out of character for him. No, he needed them. He's trying to keep this connection of comfort. And from what we know of that day, he was finally getting strong enough because of his family to leave.
Why do you think David would not initially sign a consent for you at the hospital, but did for his parents?
I think about this a lot. I really have no idea. I wish I had an answer. I don't know. He was, Friday when we're taking him to the hospital, he was very stuck on, he told me I was evil or deceit or something, and told me that the Lord or God forgives me for my sins, and that David knew who I really was, but I don't know. I think that somehow played into him not wanting to sign the consent form for me.
So he never told you directly why or accused you of anything? Or?
No.
Okay. Talking with Scott, there was an issue that David had brought up to him that occurred prior to your marriage. And it sounds like it might have been something that you had done with another guy.
Oh, yeah, when I was like 16, when I dated another guy in high school.
Is this something he brought up frequently, or is it something that just occurred because of what was going on?
Yeah, so David would sometimes drink in excess, and when he would get very intoxicated, sometimes this would come up. It happened a handful of times more frequently when we had first started dating. And then kind of as we progressed through the relationship, it kind of subsided. He didn't really bring it up as often. It was always the same thing. Each time he would get very intoxicated and get mad at me about the same issue that happened like 3 years before.
Do you think it was a jealousy issue, or do you think it was because he thought that you didn't tell him the truth before you got married and betrayed him, or something along that line?
He felt like I didn't tell him the truth before we got married, or like before this, I don't know, when he like asked me about it, and then he just like felt like I was lying to him about it. I don't think he was like jealous per se. I know that when we'd known each other since we were like 8, and we went to prom together when he was a junior and I was a sophomore. And shortly after that is when I started dating this other guy. And David did not like him and was frustrated, I think, that I dated this other guy instead of David.
Do you think that's what David was talking about when he said something about God? What did you say?
Oh, like forgiving me? Yeah, I think that is what he was talking about when he said that God like forgives me for my sins, or he knows that David said he knows I'm deceit or whatever it was. I think that's probably what he was referring to.
Okay. Did David ever refer to your marriage to you as a toxic marriage?
No.
Any reason that he would have said that to his parents?
I don't know. I mean, we argued some. We were newlyweds. We were trying to figure it out. So maybe that's why. I'm not sure.
The night that you and his parents brought him to the hospital, whose idea was it to bring him to the hospital?
It was initially Scott's idea. I came into the situation like totally blind. I was trying to take care of my friend's child. And so I was like, that baby was like my first, like I needed to get that baby out of the apartment and try and figure things out. And Scott was saying like, I think we need to take him in. And I was just asking like for a minute to like think through things. Because David was acting so weird and so strange. And he was butt naked when I walked in reading the book of Revelation to his parents at the kitchen table. And I was just like, I had no idea what was going on. And so then once we got the baby situation figured out, we were able to figure out a way to get David to go to the hospital.
So it was actually Scott's idea then?
Yeah.
Okay. Did Scott then pick the hospital he was going to, or is that something you decided?
I had said Maple Grove just because I knew it was fairly close. I guess I wasn't really thinking that North Memorial was like actually closer down the road, but I think I just said, let's go Maple Grove. I know they have like mental health care there, and that's kind of what I was thinking.
So did you take him to a hospital by the name of Fairview Riverside?
No, so he went to we took him to the Maple Grove emergency room, and we brought him there. He was intaked, I guess that's not really a word, but they took blood. I believe they did a CT scan to see like what the heck was going on. They wanted him to try and take, I can't remember the name of the medication, but kind of like an anxiety medication. And did interviews with myself, Scott and Nancy. My dad came to the hospital because I needed some support for myself. And David really trusts my dad. So I was hoping it would help. And I'm not sure what time we got there, but David was then, so once the blood work came back normal, and the CT scan came back normal, they put David in a 72-hour psychological evaluation hold. And so from then, basically we were waiting until a bed opened at another hospital. So he was transferred from Maple Grove via ambulance to Fairview Riverside, where he was for 10 days.
I don't know why, but when I listen to this, just the sequence of events, the timelines, the dates, the dosage, everything, like she's on it. She's got it. And then it just makes me remember that she couldn't remember when David told her that he was going to be leaving to stay with his parents.
I didn't know they'd gone to Maple Grove first.
Yeah.
Was there a situation where you had slapped David?
Yes. The night when I got that Friday night, I got home and he was just like not responsive. And so I slapped him on the cheek, like, hey, what's going on? Like, I thought he was really drunk. And so I was like trying to get his attention. That's something like when he would get that drunk before, like not paying attention to anything, just like, hey, what's going on? What did you drink? And at that point I could tell like this was far beyond being intoxicated.
Okay. That's all the questions that I have for right now. Do you have any questions for me?
I don't think so.
Okay, with that, then I'm going to go ahead and end this interview. Again, today's date is Wednesday, August 22nd, 2018.
A lot to process. I don't know if you noticed this, but I definitely felt like the tone of that interview was very direct. You know, there was certain questions that needed to be answered, and the delivery was much different. I felt like at the end it was like, nope, we're done. I gotta get out of here. That's all the recordings that we have today. In the next video, we're going to go through the written reports and the crime scene photos. In the meantime, I just want to reiterate that all the Elmquists want are answers to their very understandable questions. Just a reminder, the 4 main questions that we discussed in the last video and that Gavin has like nicely outlined on his site. Again, please go check out Gavin's site, go check out his YouTube, phenomenal work. But the questions the Elmquists want answered are, first, David's wrists. His body was completely burned. The only 2 spots that didn't have any burn marks on them whatsoever were his wrists right here. I also want to point out there is a photo that the family hasn't released, but they have just described it to me, and it is that one side of David's body was very much more burnt than the other. I was told that it almost looks like a distinct line just drawn down. I'm not a fire expert at all. Just hearing it though, I just thought, okay, did one side just get more oil poured, you know, directly, like splashed directly on that side? My thoughts were, if you're dumping oil on yourself, you know, it's kind of going to be, for the most part, like more evenly distributed. My mind also went to maybe that being the side that a fire was ignited. Again, I don't know how I would light myself on fire, but I would just instinctively, when I'm thinking about it, I'm like, okay, well, like more central, you know, like I don't know if I would just be like, okay, let's just start here. Those are just my thoughts though. The second question the Elmquists want answered, where's the missing lighter? Emily's statement to the police is that David poured oil on himself and they were arguing and fighting for this lighter, which is presumed to have been what he used to set himself on fire. According to the police records and the crime scene photos, the lighter has never been found, even though Emily's mom claims it was in the apartment. It has never been turned in or seen. The third question, the planted knife. We'll go more over this in the evidence photos tomorrow. But according to the police, they did not enter the apartment because there was fear that he had access to these knives that Emily brought up, and they were keeping their staff safe. When they did enter the apartment finally to take photos, they found this one knife that was removed from the knife block. Again, I will get into that tomorrow. It's very frustrating. Even in the report itself, it says that there was no fingerprints on the knife. There's no tissue. There's no oil on it. I mean, he's covered in crude oil. There would be something. The knife is completely clean. The Elmquist family believe that the knife was planted there when the police realized that the police work in this situation was very poorly done. Fourth question they want to have answered is that the door, they were told the door was locked. After he shoved Emily out of the apartment, he locked the door, and that means that he would have been the only person who could have started this fire. However, the maintenance worker for the building lived in the building, and he was the one who came up to the apartment when the fire alarm was pulled, and right next to Emily and David's apartment was the fire extinguisher. He was able to get the fire extinguisher, open the door, it was not locked, he ran right in and he extinguished the fire and extinguished David. So those are just some things to consider while I leave you today. If you can even imagine, after even all of this to process, we have so much more to go through. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for the support that you've sent me on this. And thank you so much for the support that you've sent the Elmquist family. Like I said, please go and check out their GoFundMe. They really need a lot of help from us right now. I will see you in the next video. I will miss you terribly. Until then, make sure to love each other, love yourself, and I will see you soon. Bye.